special plenary, Bharat Vishwamitra featured Shri Piyush Goyal, Honorable Union Minister of Commerce and Industry, outlining India's ambition to become the global manufacturing hub for the world.
Let us showcase in India so that the world's buyers know that for electrical, there's a one-stop shop, Bharat, that is India. Go to India, you will get to see the world over here. And I have the confidence, once we decide to do that, we can aspire in the next 5 to 7 years to reach $100 billion of international trade export from India.
The CEO's Policy Roundtable at IEEMA brought together over 120 top CEOs alongside key government leaders. Shri Shripad Naik, Minister of State for New and Renewable Energy, Shri Pankaj Agrawal, Power Secretary, and Shri Amardeep Singh Bhatia, Secretary, DPIIT, chaired a focused discussion on policy, industry challenges, and the path to energy transition. IEEMA also served as a meeting ground for the world's leading minds and buyers in the electrical and allied electronics industries. The 2025 edition saw a marked rise in international participation in the Reverse Buyer-Seller Meet, or RBSM, highlighting the event's growing global stature.
Testing check. Check 1,
Germany
2.
and France, associated with IEEMA 2025 as partner and
Hello? Hello? Yeah. Good morning everybody. All lovely members of IEEMA and all our esteemed guests. May I request all of you to take your seats please, because we are right away starting with the convention. May I request all our guests to take the seats please. Good morning, good morning. My request once again to all our guests, we don't want to delay. Let's start with the program. So one more time, good morning ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to all of you to IEEMA Annual Convention 2025. And what an auspicious time we are in when we are celebrating Navadurga, the divine energy of Mother, and the festival of power, of triumph over the evil. So to begin with, let's seek the blessings of third form of Navadurga, which is Ma Chandraghanta, who removes fears and bestows peace. So first, we'll have our annual convention. Then post-lunch, we will have members only 78 IEEMA AGM. And after the AGM is over, we'll have the first meeting of newly elected Executive Council. So let's start with the convention. Let's charge our batteries and see where the power is progressive and how economy is rolling. So it's my utmost pleasure to invite our esteemed and respected guests, Mr. S. Vijayanand, President and CEO, Amara Raja Advanced Technologies Limited, Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh, Group Chief Economic Advisor, State Bank of India. Accompanying them, IEEMA President, Mr. Sunil Singhvi, and Director General IEEMA, Ms. Charu Mathur. Thank you so much. So I request our Director General, Ms. Charu Mathur, to start the proceedings of the convention and deliver the formal welcome address. Thank you.
Good morning. Now better. Okay. Good morning and thank you for being here. Welcome to the annual convention of IEEMA. Mr. Vijayanand, President and CEO, Amara Raja Advanced Technologies. Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh, Chief Economist, State Bank of India. President IEEMA, Mr. Sunil Singhvi. Mr. Vikram Gandotra, President-elect, Mr. Siddharth Bhuturia, Vice President, past presidents, members, and friends. A very good morning and warm welcome. I'm delighted to see so many distinguished leaders from industry, our friends from embassies, and our entire industry from electrical and electronics manufacturing sector gathered here today. It's almost a full hall, and my team tells me that we are expecting an unprecedented number of delegates today, and that is really because of the stellar speaker lineup that we have today. What we have in the morning, this is the opening plenary where you hear Mr. Vijay Anand and Dr. Soumyakanti Ghosh talk about various areas, the economy and the new energy section storage today, followed by a special session with Mr. Anand Goenka, Vice Chairman of RPG Group, who is going to give his vision about how to create large corporates and how do companies manage global challenges. This will be followed by a very interesting fireside chat with Mr. Hitesh Doshi, Chairman Wari Energies, Mr. Madhav Das, Whole-Time Director, Larsen & Toubro, which is going to be moderated by our past president, Mr. Rohit Pathak. And the last piece will be a session by renowned actor and motivational speaker, Mr. Boman Irani. So here's that session for the annual convention. This will be followed by lunch and then a members-only AGM. So having outlined the day today, let me just get to a few quite short remarks before I invite the speakers here. What I see here in the audience is really the industry which is powering progress in India. The power sector has been a quiet engine of India's progress, and today we are at a moment where traditional model of power generation T&D is being reshaped by global imperatives, technology, innovation, and the ambition vision of a new India. We no longer just serve the utility business. I think the industry has come out of that mindset for a very long time. We, the IEEMA members, are truly the foundation of a modern, decarbonized, and digitally empowered India. The future of our sector is all about being diversified, resilient, having an intelligent mix of energy, and built on the pillar of traditional energy for reliability and renewable energy for sustainability. A sector that is transparent, more efficient, more responsive to a very evolving, discerning customer. A sector that is at a pivot point, navigating changes at home and overseas due to evolving geopolitical uncertainties. And you'll hear more about it. The last decade has seen incredible strides. We've connected every village and almost every home, bringing power of electricity to millions. And this electricity is set to grow by 8x. We've seen phenomenal growth in our installed capacity and navigated the complexity of massive amounts of renewable energy being integrated into the grid. Today, agile and tech-driven and deeply rooted in India's manufacturing ecosystem, the companies of the which are IEEMA members, truly embody the spirit of Make in India, with strong backward linkages and adaptive strategies and a commitment to renewables. The companies are moving into getting, to be known as powerhouses while carving an impressive global presence. On behalf of IEEMA, I salute the industry, which has really made great strides and is continuing to move forward in a very, very leadership style of manner. On behalf of IEEMA, I welcome all of you again, and now I invite IEEMA President, Mr. Sunil Singhvi, to speak.
Good morning. Distinguished speakers of the day, industry leaders, past president, my colleague of National Executive Council of 24-25 and newly elected 25-26, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my great honor to welcome you all to the IEEMA Annual Convention and IEEMA AGM. It is always a very special moment for all of us when we come together as a one community, a community that powers the nation, and through the nation, we power the world. And more importantly, I think when I was talking to our colleague from the industry who are coming here for years, it is a platform for exchanging idea. And it's become even more important when what Charu was talking about, when India or the whole world is going through the energy transition. And I think is a platform where we can share the experiences and the way whole economy is moving. Today, in the first session itself, we have two distinguished speakers talking about the storage technologies and also the chief economist of SBI talking about the economic scenario. When we talk about the progress, we often talk about the growth in the industries, road, infrastructure, cities, but none of this can function without the invisible current that runs beneath them all, that is electricity. So if you want any growth, electricity is the most important element. And we all know the what growth the government is looking for the Viksit Bharat, electricity will be playing an important role. Electricity is the really backbone of the India's growth story, whether is a fueling industries, lighting homes under the various schemes by the government of India, enabling digital transformation, which is moving at very fast pace, and helping us our climate commitments. Over the last 7 decades and more, IEEMA has been the leading voice of the Indian electrical and electronic industry. And the past year have been particularly significant year for us because of various government policies and the global economic scenario. IEEMA had a greater responsibility to become voice of the industry. And when I talk about, I'll cover in detail. Allow me, some of the few highlights of the IEEMA what we have done the last year. It was busiest year on the policy advocacy and government relations front. Working closely with various ministries, whether Ministry of Power, Ministry of Commerce, DPIT, Ministry of Steel, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, regulators, utilities, Central Electricity Authority. We engage on a spectrum of issues, whether it is supply chain issues. We all know about the various QCOs, whether on the CRGO, copper, aluminum, hundreds of items. Whether we have issue with the supply of rare earth material, omnibus technical regulation. This was another regulation which was proposed by the government. So these are the few of things. But let me assure you that Indian industry is very strong. And we have a credible voice with the government. And because of the efforts of all of you, we could convince the government to allow the import of CRGO and also defer the omnibus technical regulations. We also strengthen our international outreach, which is one of the largest, most important activities. We organize 17 international visits, and we had tied up with various other global associations. Even I had a fortune of attending the AGM of the BIMA, which is British Manufacturers Association. They invited IEEMA. We also hosted, there was a IC general body meeting here in India, and very happy to inform that IEEMA was one of the active players, and we hosted events for all the leading experts of the standardization. It helped creating an image for IEEMA in the international standard world. And I think now it is a responsibility of our industry members to make a full use of that opportunity provided by the BIS and IEEMA to actively participate in international standardization. We also deepened our regional connect to various regional power conclaves, whether it was we had a power conclave in Bihar recently, we had a power conclave in Northeast, we have a power conclave in Odisha, so various power conclaves we were organized. And we also organized various regional members meet so that we could connect with members regularly. IEEMA also hosted the largest edition of IEEMA. Footfalls we had in the exhibition. And it helped in generating business worth of $4 billion US. We also had a solid line of experts, whether for the T&D conclave, whether our other conferences also, we had a solid lineup. And I'm very happy to inform you that third time we organize MVP consultant meets. And we have also started a MVP division, which is a very, very significant milestone in the IEEMA history. And this year, our special focus was on the quality, safety, reliability, skilling, and fire safety. We organized 4 fire safety conclaves this year. But one of the most important initiatives we took about the setting of the quality cell in IEEMA. And we launched a 6-month certification program along with the IIT Kharagpur. So I am very happy to that we got a very good response from the industry, and a large number of participants will be completing the first course of 6 months reliability and will become a normal activity. We also signed an MOU this year with Quality Council of India for the implementation of JD scheme for MSCB. Friends, we have extraordinary opportunity of growth before us. The industry has displayed great strength in spite of uncertainties. We have expanded capacity. Our members have expanded capacities, invested building backward linkages, and increased its footprint globally. Our exports also have grown. Our industry has been growing at the rate of more than 10% now. And therefore, in addition to domestic demand, our members are also meeting the overseas demand and in a time-bound manner. But now, the time is come because of the global uncertainty to show the grit and resilience, especially what is happening around the world, as I said. As we stand the crossroads of these new global alignments and uncertainties, I personally see this not as a challenge, but I see this as an opportunity. When we had our interaction with the Honorable Commerce Minister, similar thing was discussed. I think what, as an industry, because of the various initiatives being provided by our members and also support provided by the government and schemes like Atmanirbhar Bharat, etc., we should look for the expanding to the new market. I know there are few tariff barriers and industry are working, but take this as an opportunity and convert this threat into opportunity to expand our global footprint. And today is a Make in India Day. And I request all the members to look for expanding capacity to meet the global demand, increase the development footprint, innovation footprint, and also expand our service footprint worldwide. As we stand at the cusp of a new energy era, let's remember, progress is not powered by the electricity alone, but is powered by vision, collaboration between us, and determination. Let me close with a thought from a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. The future depends on what you do today. I'll repeat, the future depends on what you do today. So let's act today, don't wait for tomorrow, with ambition and with unity to truly power the progress of our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. Thank you very much. I now wish to invite our first speaker, Mr. Vijay Anand. Mr. Vijay Anand belongs to a company which is a very big player in the storage and new energies. Mr. Vijay Anand is the president of Amar Raja Advanced Cell Technologies, leading company in the electric vehicle and other battery manufacturing spaces. The senior member of the Corporate Management Council at Amar Raja with an experience of more than 30 years. He's an active proponent of adoption of new and emerging technologies in the field of e-mobility, renewable energy, and advanced energy storage. Also has chaired various subcommittees on electric mobility. May I now invite Mr. Vijay?
Good morning. Thank you, Charu, for that generous introduction. And when the MC at the beginning of the event said, let's charge our batteries, I thought that was pun intended. Um, I'm here to speak for the next 20 odd minutes about what's happening around in the energy storage technologies, which is very transformative in many ways and impacting multiple segments. While the audience here, distinguished audience here, would be probably focused on how energy storage would be integrated with the renewables and the... am I audible? Okay, thank you. How it's getting integrated with the power, but I also want to provide some perspective as to what is energy storage technology is doing to many other market segments as well. But before I get going, it's truly an honor to be standing here at the IEEMA annual convention of 2025 and sharing my thoughts on the evolving landscape of energy storage technologies, which is so closely integrated with the energy transition happening all around the globe. I want to thank the IEEMA leadership and for inviting me to this event and speak to this august audience. This gathering is a powerful reflection of the strength, diversity, and ambition of India's electrical infrastructure across various member organizations. And I learned that almost 95% of the infrastructure build out is contributed by the members of IEEMA. And I think that's a true representation of the Atmanirbhar concept, which the Honorable Prime Minister has given a clarion call, but you've been doing it much before that. And close to 75% of the capital equipment deployed in India power sector is made domestically. While the members do provide 95% infrastructure, a majority portion of that is made in India already. And about $70 billion market is created, about which 18% is exported. Now, these are credentials that very few segments in India can really claim. And with this, look at what you have created. Scale, we have about 485 gigawatt of generation and close to 500,000 circuit kilometers of 220 kV and about transmission lines. The largest unified grid, 190 gigawatt of renewable energy, and the world's largest solar parks, lowest tariff on top of it, as well as creating green corridors of 40 gigawatt plus for integrating into the overall energy network, and of course bringing light into lives and also the smile onto the face of millions of homes. So everyone in this room deserves a huge round of applause for what you're doing. I also feel truly honored to share this dais during the course of the day with very eminent corporate leaders, role models for many of us, who have done extraordinary job to put India on the global map of power sector. And to set the tone for this conversation on future of energy, why the story of energy storage technology will be intricately interwoven with the progress of human society for generations to come, let me start with something that brings both science and imagination together. It's a data revolution happening all around us, and people are trying to create artificial intelligence to replicate what human brain can do, or probably what, more than what human brain can do. And the human brain is a miracle of efficiency if you were to look at the amount of power it consumes to do what it does. It weighs only 2% of the human body and consumes about 20 watts of energy when we are at rest. And just about the same as a small light bulb, but it can think, it can learn, it can create music, it can solve problems of the society, and it can dream about future. Now compare that with today's artificial intelligence technology and how power hungry it is. If you try to build an artificial general intelligence, AGI as it is called, with human level capability using current GPU technology, it might need about 100 kilowatts to 1 megawatt of power to do what human brain does with 20 watts. That's the gap we are staring at nature's perfect design versus energy-hungry machines that we humans are building. Now you extrapolate it to the data center industry. The data centers running today, AI models already consume thousands of megawatts of electricity around the world. In 2024, Global electricity consumption by data centers was about 415 terawatt hours. And that's expected to double by 2030 by certain estimates. If 5, this number is going to cross 100 terawatt hour. So the question is, where is all this energy going to come from? And how are we going to deliver it? On a very related subject, if you just look at the per capita mobile data consumption that's happening on our hands, has grown exponentially in India thanks to the increasing digitization trends. Today, almost 1 GB of data is consumed by every single mobile user on every single day. And that translates to about 750 petabytes of data getting consumed on a daily basis. Of course, how much of that is productive is a different question, but definitely it's making life of the society and the humans much better than it was. Our daily life is defined by the way we use data, and many of us, data access is almost like oxygen. If you have power going out, we recognize that within seconds. If you don't have data access, we do recognize that within seconds. I keep joking about if you go to shopping with your wife, if she is missed doing her shopping, maybe you won't recognize it, but if you misplace your phone, probably you will recognize it within 10 seconds. That's how connected we are with data. So the first thing that we search when we enter into any room or a hall or airport is where is the data connectivity. The reason I am emphasizing on this is this data is delivered to us by energy in the form of electrons. So data and energy are intricately related, and that's what we just demonstrated about the power requirements of that. So 750 petabytes of data on a daily basis that I referred requires close to about 90 gigawatt hour of energy to be delivered just for the data that we access on our hands. This is a shade under 2% of the overall energy that we consume. And in a way, data and energy are perhaps increasingly seeking attention to be added, if I may say so, to the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs of roti, kapda, and makan. Maybe you got to add data and energy as well to that. And that's why I look at it as bits and bytes are chasing clean molecules to make this data sustainable, both in form of energy that it consumes and also in the form of reliability. It is here the role of renewables takes center stage, even as we navigate through the energy transition, which is so critical for net zero targets that we have set around the globe. And I don't need to elaborate the success story of India over the last decade about how we have admirably scaled up our solar and wind energy generation with lowest tariff in the world, with largest solar parks and green corridors that I referred to earlier, with about 116 gigawatt of solar and 52 gigawatt of wind energy out of the overall 485 gigawatt of power generation capacity that we have. That becomes almost 1/3 of the power mix. But from actual generation in terms of number of units, 15 to 60% of that is renewable today. Why is it important for us? As this number inches up and gets close to about 25% to 30%, the intermittency factor starts impacting us, which means we are fast approaching a critical phase where the intermittency of renewable sources will start severely challenging the grid stability, demand-supply balance, transmission planning that requires storage, flexible generation, better forecasting, and demand-side management as well. So in today's world, the real-time generation and supply of energy is no longer enough. I think the question is, can we store this energy and deliver it when required in a manner that is sustainable? So energy storage is a critical and essential component of the overall energy transition, and here is where batteries step in. Once hidden under car hoods or in telecom rooms, if you go to the telephone exchanges, the traditional telephone exchanges, they are now the nerve center of mobility, clean grids, and digital infrastructure. And another unique feature of energy storage technology, as you get into that, is they're blending chemistry, electronics, intelligence, and multidisciplinary capabilities to create the solutions and the products. And batteries are fast emerging as fundamental to our lives as data itself. So without batteries, solar and wind will remain intermittent, and without batteries, EVs will remain a dream, till perhaps we figure out how to deal with fuel cell as a way of another alternative transmission system. Just want to step back and look at my journey in this sector over 3 decades now. When I started my journey with batteries way back in 1992, battery was most innocuous word. perhaps the last piece of equipment that you will plan when you're building a substation. That's where we have done that. So it's almost like forgotten and somebody recognized that, oh, I didn't order batteries, so let me know, contact the battery suppliers. It's a most innocuous word as well as a product, usually built in an unglamorous black container, if you go back 3 decades ago, containing generous amount of lead inside and tucked away from sight. Either it's under the hood of your car or under the staircase at your home, or perhaps in a battery room which is remotely constructed, even if you go to the complex industrial applications such as telephone exchanges. That was the time at Amar Raja we introduced the most advanced absorbed glass matrix wall-regulated lead-acid technology that made batteries user-friendly and maintenance-free. You no longer need to keep them hidden. You can bring them to the, the prominent places in the infrastructure. The journey over the next 30 years is synonymous with what happened in the Indian industry, the progress in the battery industry, which truly made, again, Atmanirbhar. Like I mentioned about IEEMA making it, even within the battery industry back in 90s, close to 40 to 45% of batteries were imported at that point of time. But today, India is a net exporter of batteries, and the battery industry is actually a net earner of foreign exchange today. However, lead-acid battery industry world over hasn't been able to attract large sums of investment in R&D or beyond the industry players and few academic research institutions. And also young talent did not find it to be a very attractive segment to go and work with because it was seen as very traditional. 150 years plus old technology that hasn't significantly changed within the lead-acid framework. Then came the advances chemistry cell, energy storage technologies that started transforming the landscape of batteries. Initially, it was the handheld consumer devices that were served by the lightweight, fast-charging lithium cells inside your own mobile phone or laptop or a digital camera. Later, one of the world's most radical enterprising technocrat, Elon Musk, and his counterparts in Asia made the passionate auto consumer believe in the power of battery-powered vehicles, and they started building gigafactories to produce lithium-ion cells that changed the scale, complexity, and technological excellence around the battery value chain. It's no longer the old traditional battery industry anymore. Today, best of the brains are engaged in advanced battery research, including convergence of physical sciences, smart electronics, and digital technologies. Batteries are being reinvented to have a brain of their own. It's very important to have battery monitoring system, data analytics to enhance the safety, reliability, and life of batteries. They're no longer tucked away out of sight as they were used to be. Instead of they are becoming a badge of honor for many countries to say they have a strong battery value chain. More and more countries are aspiring to get there to have the technological prowess, strategic resilience, and the energy security. Over the last decade or so, battery has become a ubiquitous word by all stakeholders, including policymakers, hedge fund managers, academicians, mainstream media, and even politicians, as I was remarking a little earlier. And when politicians speak about a particular phrase repeatedly, you know that idea has arrived. The ongoing revolution in energy transition pathway is incomplete without conversation around battery technology. This is exciting time ahead for all of those who are associated with world of batteries, and current techno-commercial parameters will be continuously challenged, and the future will see energy storage become integral to everything we do so. So globally, where do we stand today? There is 1,800 gigawatt hour of installed capacity of batteries, 75% of that in China, and whatever balance 25, again, a significant portion of that in Korea. So if you have to talk about large-scale battery manufacturing outside China, Korea, and take Elon Musk gigafactory out, there is very little to really claim. We got to delve into why is that so, and what are the success stories and not so success stories in efforts to create gigafactories for making batteries, which I'll spend a little more time. But this industry is going to grow 4 times by 2035 and is likely to cross 6,000 terawatt hour. Those numbers were projected to be much bigger, say 3 years ago, but I think there is a bit of a moderation looking at the rate of adoption of particularly the e-mobility. But these numbers get revisited every 6 months, so you got to keep your antenna up and going to see how those numbers are changing dynamically. So by 2035, the global capacity is estimated to exceed about 6 terawatt hour. China will continue to dominate based on the projections, but perhaps not at 75-80%, which means the incremental 3,000 or probably 4,000 gigawatt hour of new capacity that is likely to be added in the battery industry, a significant portion of that will have to come outside the established domain of China and Korea. And India has our ambitious plans. From demand perspective, India has strong case for building domestic battery value chain as a way of complementing our efforts to build energy security. Our estimation of the demand for batteries in India is likely to touch about 120 gigawatt hour by 2030, and that number is likely to double by 2035. Obviously, that's the understanding we have at current. There could be a lot more enablers to revisit these numbers and provide a upward possibility, and we got to see how we can make it happen. I think over the next 3 to 5 years, this sector will see tremendous amount of effort of developing and building. I think that's the mantra. A lot of conversation in the conference rooms have happened over the last 5-6 years, but it's time for action now. A lot of developing and building is the focus. As we speak today in India, only green shoots of gigafactories are springing up here and there. We are yet to see a large-scale commercial operation of a multi-gigawatt hour facility coming into operation, but the gap is not a weakness. In fact, we see it as an opportunity, one that we must seize with urgency. India has legacy strengths in manufacturing industry. If you have time, get hold of a very nice report that was published by CEEW last week on critical mineral challenges. And one of the phrases I remember from that report is about, they talk about structural foundation and institutional memory of Indian manufacturing capability, from mining to refining of minerals, manufacturing of electrical equipment as represented by the gathering here, auto component industry, specialty chemical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and within the battery space, the lead acid industry. Indian lead acid industry probably ranks in the top 5 around the world. So we do have the institutional memory or the record of managing large-scale complex manufacturing. I think semiconductor and the battery, the advanced batteries are probably the next barrier for us to overcome. And I see that as a positive challenge for the industry. And, if you say we are too late at this stage, I don't agree with that, because we are having a very nice pole position to join the race right now. Have we started this exercise 5-7 years ago? I think strategic direction, the policy direction, the demand uncertainty would have made it very difficult to sustain. I know we have seen in other industries where people, early starters, while they get the appreciation and recognition, have a lot more challenges to wait for the hockey stick curve to take off. But I think we are at the right moment, and I might venture to say that there is not much of a time left for us. So we do not have the luxury of losing time anymore, and it is in this context that it's heartening to see so many projects being kicked off for the last 1 or 2 years with a promise of commencing commercial operations in the next 1 or 2 years. So I did talk about how come we didn't see much of gigafactory ecosystem evolving outside China and Korea to start with. Let's look at what happened in China a bit. This is a bit of my own understanding, having made multiple visits to China. The trigger point for advanced battery technology was the consumer digital devices. So when China became the manufacturing powerhouse and was making a lot of digital consumer products, the battery became an important component inside that, and the traditional battery technology could not meet that requirement, and hence advanced battery technology was adopted. But these were tiny little battery packs that were packed inside the handheld devices or even digital cameras or laptops. That's the time I think the new energy concept was embraced by the Chinese government, and there have been significant push both on the e-mobility as well as on the battery storage value chain. So if you look at top 5 cell makers today in China, none of them really had a very strong legacy experience in manufacturing. So if you wind back to 15 years, many of those cell companies which are successful today would have been startups then. So largely, the strong gigafactory network in China and the large cell makers came out of a startup ecosystem back in China. Now, outside China, I mean, Korea is a slightly different scenario. The LG, Samsung, and SK On, three large cell makers in Korea, have had very strong manufacturing legacy and access to markets, the brand that they had, the supply chain networks that they were managing. So the Korean cell making ecosystem evolved slightly differently compared to what happened in China. But take these two countries out of the picture and look at what's happening elsewhere. I think Tesla is the only one which has established multi-giga cell making facility. And again, they were backed up by Panasonic to bring in the technology, mature it, and Tesla's inherent innovation and the Panasonic's technology capability coming out of the Japanese ecosystem helped them get to where they got into. So if you were to look at the challenges associated with this, there have been many other startups that attempted building gigafactories. There have been some of them which are lesser known failures, but Northvolt is one of the most spectacular failure case, and they're waiting to be revived now with a new owner picking up that. The challenge here is that there are three stages in making a gigafactory work for you. First is to have the technology right in the lab. The second one is to prototype it and scale it up to a commercial level. And the third one is to have resilient supply chains that will help you achieve both the reliability in the product and the cost competitiveness. I think many startups, British Volt being one of them, and of course there are many others in US, that did not go beyond a stage was where they had problem of scale up. So if you have done technology development in the lab and tested the cell and proven its cycle-like performance, C-rate performance, and energy density and many other things, that's good for lab. But how do you take it to the shop floor? How do you take it to the giga-scale manufacturing, bring in the kind of consistency? I'm assuming, at this stage, I'm assuming, supply chain is given. That problem, even if I keep aside, once you have the materials coming into your factory to be able to run a giga-scale cell line, it's both a science and art. And the experience in your hands, the type of people that manage these machines and the process control that they exercise is extremely, extremely critical here. Now, China did another fantastic thing, not just about operating gigafactories, but creating ecosystem of capital equipment required to run these gigafactories. And they have been innovating on that. I think on that front, probably it's fair to say that even Korea is not necessarily catching that up in terms of the scale, in terms of the operational efficiency. Back in 2016, I was learning that a 3 gigawatt hour plant would be world-class, world scale, global scale. And what does it take to set up a 3 gigawatt hour? The amount of money you need to set up a 3 gigawatt hour remains the same today, but you almost get 10 gigawatt hour out of it. That's the kind of innovation that happened in the capital equipment side. But 10 gigawatt hour, maybe in Indian context, that's what we can probably look at as the threshold level to become competitive. But back in China or in Europe or in US, they talk about 30 gigawatt hour as where you might hit that number of the scale efficiency that you need, considering the fixed overheads that are associated with that. So we look at from the Indian context, and let's say that there are 6 success factors that one has to be facing. Some of them are internal to the organization, some of them are external. Policy consistency. Thankfully, over the years, there's been a very clear intent and mandate that the government has provided to the industry in terms of what's the kind of policy direction that they would like to go. There's much more clear demand signals today than 5 years ago. And while the future forecasts will have a range of possibilities, we know that directionally the demand is very clear. I think one clear challenge is the technology volatility or technology movement that's happening. Every other day you keep hearing about the 5 megawatt hour packed into a 20-foot container exceeded 6 megawatt hour. And just a couple of weeks back, we said BYD is looking at a 10 gigawatt hour packed into a 20-foot container. So, that's something that you got to have. Any investments that you make, which I'll touch upon in the next point, need to be future-proofed. So then comes the CapEx, very high CapEx intensity. I have, managed all through my career a ratio of revenue to CapEx at 2 to 2.5. So if you put in $100, you're expected to create a revenue of $200 plus. But in this industry, it has right now below 1. You might end up at 0.8 to 1, which means that where do you create value for the investment that you make? That's a big challenge. And then somebody tells you that, okay, are you future-proofed? 3 years down the line, do you know that your investment is going to really be relevant? The technology that you're adopting is good. What if you have to move to the next generation technology? What's the incremental CapEx that you need to put on that? That's another challenge that we have. And of course, if you have to ask me, pick one out of these 6 as the biggest one, I would say supply chain. Both in terms of geopolitical challenges that are there, and also in terms of the manufacturing process complexity, and finally, where the minerals are available. This is where I would again refer back to that wonderful report that CEW has published. It's a 100+ page report, but there is a nice executive summary at the beginning, 7-8 pages, that really gives you insights as to what opportunities and challenges India is currently facing, because this is linked back to energy security challenges that we have. So, and then of course, finally the talent. I think that I consider more as a within challenge. We need to build the talent. And this is the area I think we are also seeing a lot of talent that's available elsewhere. Indians who have gone out there, worked, are willing to come back. Expats are looking at India. Not easy to engage with them in a manner that, there is a predictability of their association, but that is a HR challenge that we are navigating through. How do you attract talent that's experienced elsewhere to come to India? First, you need to give them the confidence that the organization invested here is really committed to it, and the Indian ecosystem will enable success. So they need to get motivated about that. The government on its part has done, as I mentioned, a lot of work in this area, starting from creating demands on the mobility side, then the PLI for the advanced chemistry cells, PLI within the automotive space, and then the viability cap funding for BS. So if you really sum it up, I think there are more than 200,000 crores of monetary support that's announced by the government. I'm not even factoring in some of the state government policies that are also intricately involved in this. So what are we doing about it at Amar Raja? I think, as I mentioned a little while ago, 3.5 decades ago, we brought in what is called, at that time, a new generation technology within the lead acid space. But now we feel that this is kind of Amar Raja 3.0 internally for us, the third phase of growth for the company. We are recognizing that lab scale to the pilot scale to the commercial scale is the ladder that one need to go. Even if you have equipment available and even if somebody tells you what need to be done, if you straight away go on to the giga scale, you're going to falter. And that's the experience of many other companies. So we are taking it one step at a time. So we are establishing at this point of time with an intent to look at 16 gigawatt hour capacity, which can be further expanded in the next phase to close to 30 gigawatt hour. But officially, at this point of time, we are committed to build a 16 gigawatt hour cell capacity and a 5 gigawatt hour pack capacity. But this need to be backed up in a structured way. So if you see on the right side, we are talking about creating a R&D innovation hub, E-Positive Energy Labs. This is a facility coming up right next to the Hyderabad airport in the GMR Aero City. That itself would incur about 500 to 600 crores of investment. This is in an advanced stage of construction right now, and we would expect this to become operational in another 3-4 months. When it is operational, it would have a 360-degree connect with the ecosystem, starting from customers and looking at what their requirements are and collaborating on the innovation side, working with the supply side of it in terms of materials and equipment, looking at academic institutions and independent design houses. Independent design houses have a very, very, very strong role to play here because there is maturity available in technology outside India, and there are people who are willing to collaborate. It's very difficult to think of getting the technology from very established players in the current context, but there are independent technology houses, design houses that we can collaborate with. So, it's kind of an open laboratory approach that we are taking, including setting up an incubation and accelerator as we build the infrastructure out. As we move on, for us, the next step is about the commercial scale pilot. It's called the customer qualification plant. This is where you learn how to make it. In the lab, you know what to make, but this is where you learn how to make it in mega scale. This will be a multi-chemistry, multi-form factor facility that will be able to address the manufacturing intricacies involved in this. It's like you can say a miniaturized a simulation model of a gigafactory, which is physically established. And I was listening to a couple of other industry leaders in a different context. It takes almost 18 months for you to get to a stage where the sample that you have prepared and submitted for customer approval get to a stage of approval, and then you realize in that journey, customers actually change their specifications. So it's a moving goalpost. And that's what's happening outside the world, and Indian customers, whether it's the auto OEs or the renewable energy developers, don't want to miss out on that. So you get a new target established. So you go back to the lab and build the next version of your pilot. And by the time you are able to get the product approved, then you have to build the large-scale commercial. So it's a 3 to 4 year journey before you are able to, at least at this phase, it's a 3 to 4 year journey before you're able to get your product commercialized. So this commercial pilot plant will act as a development center for us to experiment on all these things, give the customer sufficient confidence that the product coming out of this facility is good enough to be installed in the field, either it's a vehicle or an energy storage system, and then you can take it down to the commercial large-scale manufacturing. And I already mentioned that we are looking at 16 gigawatt hour. Right now we are looking at NMC cylindrical as phase 1 cell making line, and the second phase will involve LFP chemistry, both cylindrical and prismatic. And within prismatic, we'll be looking at some very unique form factors because there are many intricacies involved in terms of safety. How are you venting the gases coming out of it? Cell to pack configuration, a bit more challenges when it comes to mobility in terms of the integration with the vehicle control unit and the digital analytics that you need to do. I was told by one of the industry participants that a Tesla pack in a Tesla car outperforms the cell. You assume that cell, when it is integrated with the pack, there is a kind of a degradation, but the intelligence that they built into the BMS capability that they built into it enhances the performance of the pack overall, even compared to the cell. So those are the kind of the innovations that are extremely important. So to conclude from what we are trying to achieve here, I think energy storage value chain is extremely critical linked to the energy security for the country. We are at a very critical juncture in this journey. What's likely to happen in this country over the next 3 years will set the pace and direction in which we will be able to scale this up. And it requires significant amount of capital. And I'm talking about not just capital, it's a risk capital. At least phase 1 for every industry is a risk capital. If I go to a bank and ask them to fund me at this phase, I'm finding it extremely difficult. They ask me, where is your customer? They ask me, where is your supply chain? Where is your plant operational metrics? Very difficult to be able to demonstrate. I can put a lot of PowerPoint slides, but really when it comes to doing the due diligence on that, it's pretty challenging. So phase 1 risk capital probably is the significant. Once you get there, probably the additions and expansions will become relatively easier. And that's where we are. So to conclude, I think India's clean energy story will be written in the millions of skilled people that will be engaged with the industry, in the resilient supply chains that we need to establish, and in the ecosystems that we will create to be able to compete in the world. I know there are nationalistic view on economics that many countries are taking. So will India have access to global markets? I said, India may get to about 200 gigawatt hour, but the global capacity is going to touch 6,000 gigawatt hours. So you are 3% of the global capacity at that time. What influence can you exert on that? Just add another 500 gigawatt hour of global markets to your manufacturing capacity, take your 200 to 800, 900, then probably you will have a say. But will we have access to the global markets, which have a lot of protectionism these days? I think that's a big point to be looked at. So it must be a collective mission for all the stakeholders, and this hall represents the very ecosystem that can make it possible. Manufacturers, utilities, technology providers, financiers, innovators, everybody is in the game. Imagine the possibilities if we collaborate more deeply, bundle our strengths across hardware, software, and services, and integrate our solutions across the entire energy and electronics value chain. Together, we can build not just competitive business, but a resilient and sustainable energy future for India and the world. I think IEEMA is going to be an important partner in this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now invite Dr. Soumyakanti Ghosh, Group Chief Economic Advisor, State Bank of India. Dr. Ghosh is a member of the 16th Finance Commission and member of PM Economic Advisory Council. He serves as the chairman of the Indian Banks Association Economist Group and is also a committee member that has been set up by the Government of India to revise the IIP and the WIP. For 8 successive years, Dr. Ghosh has been ranked as one of the best individuals in research in India by the Asset magazine and has an extensive list of publications in domestic and international journals, and we are privileged to hear him in person today. Dr. Ghosh.
Good morning, everyone. I thank the Indian Electrical and Electronics Manufacturer Association for giving me this opportunity to address the national executive members of IEEMA. I specifically thank Mr. Singh, Sunil Kumar Singh, the President, Madam Charu Mathur, Director General, Dr. Kamal Golia, and Sri Ninath Rana, the Director, for giving me this opportunity and to also interact with all of you. I can see a very spirited ensemble, and I will call it a pleasant Mumbai morning. So it has been not raining, but the weather is very pleasant. And my topic for today is I would name it as alchemy of sustainable growth. My idea is that I will try to meander through the tenets of holistic and sustainable developments that would attempt to offer an kaleidoscopic peek into the imminent future, the roadmap for ultimate realization of a shared dream we all of us share in terms of advancement of the Indian economy. Let me structure my address in 2 parts. First, I will touch upon the long-term as also the short-term trends in Indian economy with reference to the vision of an advanced economy by 2047. I will then also talk about the emerging trends in the electrical industry in the coming 5 to 10 years. I know all of you are experts in this field. I'll just try to add a little bit to that knowledge. And finally, I'll touch upon the global trade dynamics and how it will impact the Indian economy. If I look into the past decade, Indian growth story has been really remarkable. It was the 10th largest economy in 2014. We are now the 5th largest and possibly a $5 trillion economy by 27-28. 2026 possibly will overtake Japan and emerge as the 4th largest global economy. And 2028, we could move into the 3rd position with a GDP of around $6.6 trillion. Of course, we have to advance on per capita income, but I will just come to that shortly. What is, however, striking is the pace of expansion. If we actually look into India's journey from 1950, India is now adding $1 trillion to its GDP every 3 years, a feat that few nations in economic history have managed. This acceleration has been powered by a unique combination of demographic dynamism, digital transformation, infrastructure expansion, and a slew of policy reforms. Let me start with some of the policy reforms actually which has been done at the ground level, but it is actually adding an enormous value to the economy in pulling up people from the bottom of the pyramid. I think I can start with the Prime Minister Awas Yojana. 3.2 crore houses has been sanctioned. The Mudra scheme, 33.65 lakh crores have been sanctioned. 52 crore accounts, 68% to women entrepreneurs. Prime Minister Swanidhi scheme, 68 lakhs street vendors, 96 plus loan accounts. Uddam, I think it's a portal which is an extremely useful portal in terms of formalization. The registration of the medium and small medium enterprises has now happened in excess of 6.86 crores on the Uddam Assist portal. The Shrom Suvidha, the compliance of labor and employment portal with 6.63 lakh ESIC registration, 6.49 lakh EPFO registration, and 1.29 lakh contract labor registrations by farms since 2018. There is another program which is happening, and I think this is going to add a lot of value in the future. In the Shamitya program, which is basically the integrated inhabited property ownership solutions for rural areas, where drone surveys have been completed in 3.2 lakh villages. There is a program also of Naksha, which is a comprehensive GI integrated database of urban land parcels with pilot programs in 150 cities initially, which will expand to 4,912 urban local bodies pan-India, and SASKI, which is basically the 50-year interest-free loans for capital expenditure from center to states. All these are actually leading to layers of formalization. MSC farms have been scaling up. Daily UPI transaction has crossed 700 billion plus, and RuPay has been going global, opened the tenacity of effort elasticity. Let me just spend a few minutes on this program of Shamitya. I think this is a very interesting program which is happening in rural India, giving the property cards. In fact, in our bank also, we are witnessing that wherever these property cards have been distributed, an enormous value is being generated in terms of that particular district, and also in terms of realization of the value of the rural property. I think this urban local bodies program, I think very recently this came into the paper that the government is going to roll out a program also of this on an extensive scale, is very important in a country like India, because on a fiscal scale, if you look into India's tax to GDP ratio, India is at 12, the central government is at 12% tax to GDP ratio, the states is at 7%, and the municipal corporations in India has 0.1% of GDP is the tax revenue. And I think the next level of reforms, whatever we do, we need to address this urban infrastructure in a big way. As you know that there has been urbanization has been happening, there has been significant amount of infrastructure development, but for that we need urbanization and proper planning. So I think that's the next level of reforms which we need to do, and for that, the urban local bodies should also have, apart from the fund development from the center to the states, and from the states to these urban local bodies, it is important that they have a plan of proper fund realization so that they can build up the urban infrastructure at the ground level. So this is important, and this actually, all these schemes fortifies many schemes started earlier, the Smart Cities Mission to Har Ghar Jal, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, Kishan Samriddhi Nidhi to Ayushman Bharat Yojana. The synergy reflected beyond numbers, anchoring bankrolling of new investment. In fact, in this Har Ghar Jal, I'll give you a very interesting example. I think what has been happening in many states, for example, like Rajasthan, whereby the woman had to go to large areas to fetch water at some point of time. Research now shows that because of this initiative of the Har Ghar Jal, the participation of the woman in the labor force actually is going up. Maybe some of them, a large part of them is family labor, but that is also freeing up the men for the manufacturing activities. So I think these are all things happening at the ground level, but these are important initiatives for a structural transformation of the Indian economy. Now, having said this, let me now talk a little about what the long-term vision of the Vikshit Bharat is, whether is within our grasp to strategic position of action and priorities. I'll talk about some numbers over here to see whether it's feasible or not to attain that level in 2047. Our estimates show that if we sustain a growth rate of around 7.93% annually in per capita national income, India would cross the high income threshold that defined by World Bank, which is basically that you should have a gross national income of around 13,936 per capita. Currently, it's for India is around $2,800. This growth is adjusted for annual population growth of 0.6%. So the per capita income need to grow at 7.93% annually from till to 47. What we have done in the past, can we do it? Let us see. The average GDP growth at constant dollar during FY4 to FY25 was 7.64%. India will thus need to accelerate the growth rate of 7.64% achieved during the longer period of 2003 to 4 to 24-25. Mind that is inclusive of the post-COVID-19 years by only 0.3 percentage points more. Let me add a data point over here. If we exclude the COVID year, the average GDP growth from FY4 to FY25 was in excess of 9%. But I am taking the COVID year into consideration, so we just need to accelerate the growth rate by 30 basis points so that we can get the tag of a developed economy by 2047. At that point of time, there are various estimates. The projection of the government is around 30 trillion, so we could actually land up in the range of say 25 to 30 trillion in size. This would mean that India, which today incrementally contributes about 7% of global GDP, could account for close to 15% by that point of time. So the simple math says that we can do it at the current rate what we are observing. Having said this, now let us see what could be the transformation by that point of time. Such transformation, however, will inevitably be accompanied by structural changes. Agricultural share in GDP is likely to decline to about 10%, but its role as a source of food, nutrition security, rural employment, and supply for agro-based industry will remain crucial. I think one of the issues with the Indian economy in the past, in the last several years, last 2 decades or so, is a share of the agricultural economy, which is currently at 46%. Unfortunately, the share of agriculture had declined around 42, 43%, but after the pandemic, there was a reverse migration, went up to 46%. If you look into the history of any developed country, for example, if you look into the history of UK, it took them around 150 years to bring down the share of agriculture from more than 70% to the current level of 20%. United States, I think, took about 70 years or more. India actually, by the time maybe in 2047, if we are able to reach that level, the share of agriculture should have to decline by less than 20%. That's going to be a difficult job, but we are hopeful about, optimistic about it one. Maybe I think the definition of agriculture currently needs to look into a holistic approach. It's more of an urban area, urban right now, rural and urban combined, because the rural infrastructure, which is developing at a rapid pace, actually sometime making that boundary between rural and urban a little bit difficult. Service may stabilize at around 55%, driven not only by IT and financial services, but also by healthcare, logistics, and creative industries. The industrial sector, particularly large, globally competitive firms, will need to play a leading role in generating quality employment. It could drive innovations, anchor global supply chains, and there the role of industry bodies like IEEMA comes into the fore in steepening this curve of transformation. Let me talk a little bit about some of the measures, then I'll talk about the industry. I think all of us have been talking about the recent rationalization of the GST rates, which basically marks a significant step towards a more citizen-friendly and growth-supportive tax system, which will also ensure that our industry becomes more competitive. In fact, today, we have this two-tier tax system, 413 goods, 295 now attract 5% on nil GST, which is down from 12. The effective weighted average GST rate was 14.4% at inception. It is now expected to decline to 9.5%. While the government estimates the net fiscal impact of 40,000 crore annually, it could be a little more or a little less. Maybe even if I assume it's a little more. The boost to consumption and economic activity is expected to offset much of the revenue loss, keeping the fiscal deficit unaffected. In fact, if any of you look into the GST data for the last 8 years, in 2019 there was significant reduction in GST rates. The GST took a little dip. The threshold level at that point of time was 1 trillion per month. Then rapidly over the next couple of months, this threshold moved up to 2 trillion, close to around 1.5, then now it is at 2 trillion. And there are sources which say me that if you are able to plug all the loopholes properly, this threshold could actually move up to 3 to 5 trillion over a point of time. The GST rationalization of services is also expected to reduce the inflation by 40 to 45 basis points. And inflation actually is now less of a problem, and you can actually see that inflation rapidly declining to below 3% in the next couple of months, which will provide a very significant backdrop for domestic consumption investment. The government has lowered the income tax, the government has rationalized the GST rate, and with low inflation, I think there is no reason that why there should be a significant pickup in consumption and also investment. India's current account deficit is comfortable, manageable, strong remittances, despite some clouds on recent measures concerning the H-1B visas. We recently did an estimate of what could be the impact on these remittances to India. We found that the impact actually could be negligible based on our data. However, global trade tensions such as the 50% tariff rate, and on a lighter note, I think there are news every day. Yes, I think day before yesterday there was the news of this escalator breaking down in the UN. So you will get this news now and then, but they could pressure on exports with varying intensity across sectors. The combined effect of GST-led consumption growth, remittances, structural reforms that India's growth trajectory will remain positive, resilient, as our earlier speaker, Mr. Anand said, resilience, and well anchored in sustainable and inclusive development. The most important point is that the Indian digital public infrastructure, digital economy today, as per the government data, in 2023 was 12% of India's GDP. From Aadhaar and UPI to GSTN, and UA Bills has created a unique ecosystem where financial services can be delivered at population scale with low cost and high efficiency. Artificial intelligence and big data are being used for smarter credit underwriting, as we are doing in our bank, fraud detection and proactive risk management. This has brought hundreds of millions into the formal economy, making financialization not just broader but also deeper. The upward journey of this upwardly mobile cohort is also evidenced through snapshots in pattern of taxpayers' movement. The bottom state of taxpayers has been constantly moving up to higher echelon, all premiumization of markets, white goods or premium varieties of mobiles being sold. As we look into the future, the guiding principle for the great country of ours must be driven by 4 I's: innovation, infrastructure, investment, and inclusivity. Innovation will drive productivity and competitiveness, ensuring that India remains ahead in adoption of new technologies, from mobility to energy solution, by which battery storage to green hydrogen to digital platforms built upon AI and big data. Infrastructure, both physical and digital, will enable connectivity, efficiency, and resilience as we expand the multimodal playbook of National Infrastructure Pipeline and Prime Minister Gati Shakti. Investment, both domestic and foreign, will sustain the growth momentum as traditional sources of financing, with banks funding joining hands with the capital markets. In fact, today, the fund mobilization by the corporates from the capital markets are running ahead from the this compared to the banks, and alternative sources of private credit to keep the economic wheel rolling, embedded with prudent risk management practices and regulatory reforms. Inclusivity, which is the hallmark of the present policies, it ensures that growth is not only fast but also fair, reaching women, farmers, small businesses, and rural communities. Together, these 4 I's will remain the cornerstone of our journey towards an advanced economy. Opportunities to support the vision of the Vikshit Bharat also necessitate accelerated funding for sustainable infrastructure creation, transport and connectivity, a multimodal logistic network across roads, railways, ports, inland waterways, and air. The government recently actually took steps in terms of the port infrastructure, power, shifting to more efficient and smarter grid systems with the use of real-time data to improve efficiency. Green investment, I'll talk about this green investment in details. Renewables, green hydrogen production, and grid-scale energy storage systems, while reducing import dependence and enhancing energy security to ensure rapid harnessing of drivers of growth, are all sine qua non. But we also need to partner with global firms and institutions to ensure critical technology and skill sets are of mutually beneficial agents of change, ensuring brand India, which we all talk about, and made in India, not just another passe, but deeply ingrained in our collective conscience. Let me now talk a little bit about the industry. India today is the 3rd largest producer and consumer of electricity worldwide, with an installed capacity of 500 gigawatts. In the past 5 years alone, electricity consumption in the country has grown up by 1/3, a compounded annual growth of 7%. The rising demand, coupled with our commitment to achieve net zero by 2070, creates immense opportunities for innovation, investment, and industrial growth. Infrastructure spending is poised to increase to 90 to 100 trillion between FY26 to FY30. It was 60 trillion between FY21 to 25, and power sector comes on the top along with transportation. I think these are the two sectors which could see the maximum amount of developments. In fact, Indian electrical and electronic sector has seen a significant increase in foreign direct investment over the past few years, particularly electronics, which attracted 2 billion FDI in FY25. Taken together with electrical equipment, it accounts for around 5% of India's gross FDI in equity. Overall gross FDI into this sector rose from 1.7 trillion in FY21 to 2.6 trillion in FY25, which was a 48% growth in the last fiscal year. On the trade front, exports of electrical machinery and related equipments have grown sharply, 20 billion in FY22 to 44 billion in FY25. Sector shares of India's total exports is now more than 10%. It was 4.8% in 2 to 3 years back. Major export destinations include the USA, UAE, and the Netherlands, with the USA alone receiving 15.9 billion worth of goods in FY25. So here is the challenge of actually the trade deal, which I will come into. By 2032, renewable capacity is expected to rise to almost 600 gigawatts from 185 gigawatts today. This implies a multifold expansion in solar, wind, green hydrogen, grid-scale storage, and associated technologies. Each of these areas represent not just a business opportunity for all of us, but also a chance for India to reduce dependence on imported fuels, cut carbon emissions, and emerge as a global hub for green technology manufacturing. Foreign direct investment in renewables is also rising sharply, with over $21 billion invested cumulatively and more than $3.7 billion added in the last financial year. Domestic investment is also accelerating, with leading Indian firms announcing giga-scale projects in solar modules, battery manufacturing, and green hydrogen. As we have just understood, the government's production-linked incentive schemes for electronics, semiconductors, solar equipment are already beginning to create new capacity, jobs, and export opportunities. What is more important is the sector financial performance. In FY25, revenue in the electrical and allied electronics sector grew by over 11%, which was faster than the overall corporate sector. Profitability too has been stronger, with EBITDA growth of 13%, which is nearly double that of the broader Indian industry. Over the past 15 years, revenue in this sector has grown more than threefold, in line with the transformation of Indian infrastructure and industry. The implication is clear. This sector and all of you are just not about meeting domestic demand, but also shaping India's competitive edge in the global green economy. It is an industry where sustainability, technology, and competitiveness will converge, and hence one of the most important contributors it could emerge to the vision of an advanced economy. However, there are opportunities, there will be challenges. This sector must overcome issues of supply chain resilience, dependence on imported critical minerals, and of course the need for skilled manpower. It should also adapt to rapid technological changes, where product life cycles are shrinking and innovation is actually relentless. With innovation and design in manufacturing, infrastructure for reliable transmission, investment in R&D, I think, which is one of the areas where we need to step up our motto, and inclusivity in workforce participation, the sector can become not just a growth engine for India, but also a global leader. But our growth path does not exist in isolation. The global economy is undergoing significant churn, and India must navigate these currents carefully. The last 6 months or so have seen considerable uncertainty in the US tariff policy, particularly with rising tariffs, which is going to have an impact, short-term impact. If the trade deal comes, it's fine, but it's going to have an impact on the Indian economy. At the same time, the global financial environment is complex. Inflation in advanced economies remains sticky. Many central banks have decided not to go for rate hikes, but to cautious rate cuts. Our own Reserve Bank of India has already front-loaded a rate cut in June, but remains guided by evolving data and external conditions. The bond yields, which is a parameter of the borrowing cost, inclined towards hardening almost across the globe, pricing in divergent risk and elevated borrowings as the world order is undergoing a catharsis. Reduction by various central banks showcases this perplexity, a plateau after aggressive cuts, as new data emanating from a plethora of sources does little to bring much needed clarity. Central bank communications are therefore the key amidst all the cacophony naturally. Let me now go towards summarizing my speech. Beyond trade and finance, there is also a deeper geopolitical and economic rebalancing underway. I think this is important. The growing synergy between Russia, India, and China, and the wider global south, which represents more than 80% of the world total population, 27% of the global GDP, offers enormous opportunities to build a more balanced and resilient world order. Innovation too is shifting. China now accounts for nearly 3/4 of global patent filings, but India is among the fastest growing innovation economies. Together, this realignment holds the potential to shape a new architecture of global growth. For India, this changing global context presents both risks and opportunities. On the one hand, protectionism, financial volatility, and geopolitical tension could disrupt trade, investment, and supply chains. We are seeing that this is actually happening. On the other hand, India's demographic dividend, digital infrastructure, and policy stability provide a strong foundation to attract global capital and talent. As multinational firms seek to diversify supply chains, India has an historic chance to position itself as a trusted, competitive, and sustainable alternative. In critical areas, we are witnessing these evolving contours of this partnership as marquee names are eager to allocate more bandwidth to new Indian users and talent for exciting areas like AI and chip fabrication. To conclude, India today stands as an inflection point. The economy is growing steadily, supported by a policy regulatory environment in harmony that fosters trust, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Key industry like the electrical and the allied electronic sector are scaling up rapidly, aided by targeted incentives and strengthening of digital infrastructure. Simultaneously, the expansion of startups, R&D investment, and state-level competitive reforms signal a deepening ecosystem for innovation-led growth. While this global economic landscape remains uncertain, India's combination of policy predictability, streamlined business processes, and integrated infrastructure position would make India an attractive destination for domestic and foreign investment, laying the foundation for sustainable and inclusive economic expansion. I'll just end with a quote by John F. Kennedy. American roads are not good, because this is a quote which the minister, Mr. Gadkari, often quotes. The American roads are not good because America is rich, but America is rich because American roads are good. John F. Kennedy had once said, recognizing the uber importance of critical infrastructure in fanning multifaceted growth and attracting investments. With electrical and electronic sector destined to play a pivotal role in shaping our journey towards an Vikshit Bharat, we would all like to see a world order where India becomes the role model for the global south in adopting critical technologies while ensuring sustainable and accelerated developments that benefits its populace as we reap the demographic dividends and skill sets. I thank you all for a patient listening and also for the opportunity you gave me today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, our distinguished speakers, for those very interesting and thought-provoking speeches. I would request our President, Mr. Sunil Singhvi, to present a memento to our guests, to Mr. Vijayanand. Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh. Thank you so much for the energetic start of the convention. I would request our distinguished guests to please take the seats in the audience. And we'll immediately start with segment 2 of annual convention, which is a special plenary. Please allow us a few moments while we are changing the setup. The next session will be the special plenary with young and dynamic Mr. Anant Goenka, Vice Chairman of RPG Group. And I'm sure he's going to bring lot of thought-provoking ideas to the table. May I request our President-elect, Mr. Vikram Gandotra, to accompany Mr. Anand Goenka to the dais, please? Thank you, sir. I request Mr. Gandotra to formally introduce Mr. Goenka and start with the session.
Good morning. Yeah. I know you didn't have breakfast. Good morning. Thank you so much. So as we are here after a very interesting session, I was observing the crowd, and the way, I don't know, Charu has decided to arrange the seating arrangement. If the electrical industry is strong today, the reason is here. The founding fathers of electrical industry, all our past chairmen, I see that they're all together and they've made sure that our industry today stands on strong foundations. Thank you, sir. And if I look in the center, I see the leaders of today, and if I see a little bit to the right, I see the next generation which is coming. So this is somehow, it has happened that the electrical industry is strong and will get stronger in the years to come. And thanks to all of you who are here today. Thank you so much. And to continue this program today, I am really honored to introduce Mr. Anant Goenka, Vice Chairman, RPG Group. Friends, we have a very young next-gen leader who walks tall in the industry and a 7th generation leader. It's a family of business leaders, and we are so happy to have him here because he carries with him 7 generations of business experience today, and that is something which is invaluable anywhere in the world. So we will be happy to have him here and listen to his views on building good corporations, insights, and family businesses. At a young age, Anant is the vice chairman of the RPG Group, a US $4.8 billion conglomerate, interests in tires, infrastructure, pharma, IT, and many, many more. Anant has been recognized by Forbes as the next generation business leader of the year and India's 40 under 40 business leaders by Economic Times. Anant, he's a MBA from Kellogg School of Management and from Wharton School, he's a BS in Economics. Not only that, he is a senior vice president at FICCI and he will take over as president in November. Thank you so much. So I welcome Anand. Please come and address the audience.
Thank you, Vikramji, for your kind words. Mr. Singhvi, President, IEEMA, Mr. Gandotra, President-elect, Mr. Bhatoria, Vice President, Charuji, DG. I was speaking to my children yesterday. I have two teenage children, a girl and a boy. I was speaking to them yesterday, so we speak about next day's plans or what happened in the day. So I was telling them tomorrow I have to go to IEEMA and speak. So they were asking, you know, what is IEEMA and what does it do? So I was trying to tell them, and I said that we bring light into people's lives. They nodded a little seriously. So they nodded and they said, so does Instagram. So in a way, that's when I kind of thought that while others may bring metaphorically, we do it literally as the electricals industry. And I think right now, really, the light is shining on our industry. I think timing really could not be much better. And I think it's a wave that we are riding. Today, I'll speak about really three themes, which I think are fairly powerful and I think of fair amount in my role. One is about riding the wave. Second is embracing excellence. And the third is on long-term thinking. They say in the startup world, the most critical factor for success, it's not funding, it's not product, it's not even the team, but it is timing. In fact, Bill Gates very often says that, he said, if I was born a few days or few years earlier or later, I might have never ridden the software wave and I wouldn't have been where I am right now. And I think history has proven this again and again. If you look at the various corporations in India, I mean, what happened in the 90s, 2000s, late 90s and early 2000s saw the rise of the IT giants, Wipro, Infosys. As a result of the Y2K change happened, and then cloud and infrastructure, outsourcing to India, all of those were largely industry-led changes that caused the rise of these. We had the telecom industry, which transformed again in the early 2000s, and you had the rise of Bharti, Vodafone, etc. And the pharmaceutical industry around that time as well, with Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy's emerging as iconic large companies during this period. And I think every decade, in a way, has its own story of success. But once again, it's about being in the right industry and the right moment as an industry. McKinsey recently identified 18 growth areas for the next 15 years, and few of them are semiconductor, autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, AI, space, batteries, robotics, nuclear. And I'd say if you draw a Venn diagram of all these mega trends, I'd say electricity is at the center. So really, it is the time of this industry right now, and the importance of industry impact is often not understood or often underestimated. Where you play is more important than how you play. A company in a rising industry with an average team is more likely to succeed than an A-grade team in a stable or slowing industry. And I think this is a fact that has been proven again and again in different industries in different times. Of course, there are exceptions that exist, but largely, I think where we are and what we're doing is more important. In fact, I'd say India has two big opportunities. We are riding two waves, not only the industry wave of the electricals and the mega trends that we see, but Mr. Ghosh touched upon the India wave. So I think that's a big growth story that we are seeing right now. Huge infrastructure spends, great demographics, rising spending, favorable, demographics, skill, talent, policy stability, policy government stability that we are seeing. So it is the time for India. So it's India plus electronics that give us this time. Personally, I spend a lot of time on trying to think of what are the trends in our group, and within each, we are focusing on a few areas. And just to give you a few examples, in our infrastructure company, KEC, we are seeing renewables, data centers, cables as big trends. And within that, we are spending disproportionate amount of time and effort to see how do we grow and how do we build an India which is still not fully built. We still have nearly half or three-fourths of India that will be built in the next 20, 30 years' time. Raychem RPG, which is our other electronics and energy related company, which is into cables, accessories, transformers. Again, we are seeing huge trend of growth in some of these spaces. And we are looking particularly at the semiconductor industry. And the way we look at it is we identify the entire value chain. You don't have to get into the heart of the industry if you don't have the scale, but at least everyone in the value chain is likely to benefit. But I'd say here's a catch. Not everyone who catches the wave stays on the surfboard. Some companies rise and others fall behind. And I'd say at RPG itself, we've had our own share of misses. We're in the pharmaceutical industry. We saw the rise of Sun Pharma and Dr. Reddy's, as I shared, but we were not able to capture that wave maybe 15 years ago. We are still in the IT industry, but we are not the Wipros and Infosys yet at this time. So we've learned in a way the hard way, but there are some that are seeing that success. And in fact, I would say our infrastructure company is in process of riding that wave. So what really differentiates the winners and the losers? And that brings me to the second point. It is embracing excellence. And excellence may sound like a cliched word, but I'd say at CEAT particularly, I'd say we won the Grand Deming Prize from Japan. And I'd say I have at least developed my own definition or understanding of excellence through this journey. I've spent personally 15 years of my time on CEAT, so I'll give you some more examples on CEAT because that's what I know a little bit better. So I'd say when I joined CEAT, we faced various challenges. Our debt levels were high. We had a debt equity of 2:1. Customer satisfaction was fairly low. We had low value creation over a long period of 7-8 years. We were maybe the lower value creators in the industry. Profits were fairly erratic, and we had limited differentiation in terms of the product as well. And within the company, we had things like flavor of the month culture, saying that let's start working on cost reduction initiatives this month. Let's start working on improving delivery next month. So there was a fair amount of confusion on what do we work on as key initiatives. There was a lot of firefighting because something was going wrong and a lot of the industry focus or company focus would go into those spaces. And I'd say around 2008-9 period or 2008 to 11, we would send about 3 top leaders to Tokyo to learn about the Japanese management system, and which is called TQM or Total Quality Management. And I'd say by about 10-11, nearly 10 out of our top 10-12 leaders had gone through the program. And we realized that the Japanese are doing something right. We have some way to go. So let's work on adopting TQM. We were not fully convinced, and nor did we fully understand what this word total quality management fully meant. But during the course of the journey, we defined our own meaning of TQM. And I would say there are 3 things that we defined as TQM, or I'm using the word excellence for that. I'd say one is customer centricity. Second is focus on systems and processes. And the third is focus on people. Now going on to customer centricity, I'd say that really the thinking is that are we solving the customer's problems daily? Are we truly doing deep insighting as to what are these latent needs and unmet needs of the customers and developing products for that, or products or services for that issue? Are we inventing for the customer? Do we have a strong customer satisfaction scoring system strong understanding of the true customer's problems and solving that. So that's what we understood by customer satisfaction. A few things that we did, at that time we decided to focus on the two-wheeler segment. We felt that competitively it is lower competition, it was a slightly better strength for CEAT, and we decided to focus on that. And there we did deep customer insighting. We went in, we understood what are the needs, and we found that safety was a very important need for the customer, and safety can be achieved by getting good grip on the tire. Our other insight was a lot of people felt that I'm a good driver, but the other person is not a good driver. And so we came up with one new product range, very simple product range called CEAT Grip. We then came up with a product campaign, which we called as the Idiot Safe campaign, saying the road is full of idiots. To protect yourself from the idiots on the road, use a tire with high grip, which will offer you good safety. And that simple messaging did fairly well. We also worked on distribution, on a lot of work on channel, on the customer experience. But I think the core message was really understanding the customer needs. And that took up our market share from about 10-11% to about 30% today in the two-wheeler space. The second part of it is on strong systems and processes. I'd say many of our companies are family owned. Many of our companies are MSMEs. So you have the boss who takes the final decision, everyone comes up to him. But as we grow, we have to professionalize, we have to have the right systems and processes. And again, when you think of it, at least we thought of what are the core systems and processes, rather than just saying, let's create SOPs and on what we do. We said the 4 or 5 things that really matter. How do we create our strategies on a certain regularity, maybe once in 3 years or once in 5 years? How do we create our annual plans? Is there a system and process behind that? Once we create our annual plans and we have our clarity on the goals for the year, how is that getting deployed to everyone in the company? From the top to the person on the shop floor, or from the top to the person who's selling the tire, the feet on the street. And that clarity has become very clear over time. It took years. The second thing was, is there a rhythm to how we do our review, what we call as daily work management? It's not necessarily daily, but it is to do with, is it monthly, is it weekly, is it daily? Depends on the context, if you're on the shop floor, etc. We also had a lot of challenges on the shop floor itself. Breakdown levels were high, and we decided to focus on OEE, we focused on debottlenecking, but more importantly, systems like autonomous maintenance, planned maintenance, etc. Simple things that already exist but were not fully getting implemented. We implemented some of those practices on the shop floor. The third element on excellence is on people and capability building. And here what we did was, we said, a lot of us are doing hard work. Everyone is working hard, everyone is busy, everyone works 8, 10, 12 hours per day. But what are the improvements that each person is working on? And we said we want 100% people involvement in improvement activities. So everyone has to do either small improvements or large improvements, or both. Small may be what we call as kaizens, which is continuous improvement, or complex problems that have to be solved, where you have a cross-functional team, you have a 7-step methodology of problem solving, and usually in about 2-3 months' time, you should be able to solve that problem. So we built a lot of problem solving capability in the team, and I'd say that capability was able to differentiate us over time. So I'd say these were the 3 components of business excellence that we built and developed, and I think that is something which enables the teams to ride the waves that come up. The third element that I'm talking about at the macro picture, riding the wave, embracing excellence, the third is long-term thinking. And I think this itself is something which is getting less and less importance in time as we move towards quarterly reporting. In fact, Donald Trump has been talking about moving from quarterly to once in 6 months. Not that I buy into everything that he says, but I think on this side, I'd say that certainly everyone is lost in saying that, okay, what are we going to do in this quarter? Our behaviors in elevators when we meet people is, acha ye month ka sale kaisa chal raha hai? It's natural behavior that we all have. And, uh, and we have to change that thinking to longer term thinking. I think, how do we think in end of 2 years, 3 years, maybe generations over time? What is it that we want to build? We heard a lot from Mr. Ghosh on India as a rising industrial power. We have done very well. We are maybe the fastest growing economy in the world. We've become the 4th largest economy, on our way to becoming the 3rd largest economy in the world. But I'd still say we still don't have world-class companies. And some of it which you touched upon, our investment in R&D, for example, is lacking. We invest about 0.7% of our GDP versus 2 to 3% that gets spent by the developed world. Our quality systems, I gave you an example of Japan. Japan moved from post-World War II, where Japanese manufacturing stood for bad quality, made in Japan standing for high quality. Our MSMEs are still resisting QCOs that are being put up by the government, and I think we have to embrace higher quality in whatever we are doing. And as a result of some of this, our exports are still limited. We are doing about $430 billion in exports versus $3.5 trillion of China. We are about 1/10 of what China is doing, and that's the scale of difference between a country that has been strategically thinking long term and strategically thinking about investing in certain areas. And fourth is on brand. I mean, can we think of a single Indian product brand that has gone global? And that's something, again, which we are not spending enough on. So I'd say, as an industry, we have to work on solving global customer problems, investing in R&D, investing in intangibles such as brand, such as trust, and I'd say letting go sometimes a little bit of our profit margin for the longer term gain that is there. A recent example that we've all seen is that of Kolhapuri chappal. Yeah, we know that you get a Kolhapuri chappal for about 1,000 rupees anywhere in Bombay. Prada just started making Kolhapuri chappals, and they are selling it at 2 zeros higher, 1 lakh rupees for one Kolhapuri chappal, by just putting their brand there. So that's the kind of the power of the brand and the value that we can keep in India or in our companies or in our industry if we were to think of building a brand over time. So I'd say really thinking long term. I know when we started our TQM journey in CET, we knew that from the gurus of TQM, when we started in about 2009-10, they said it will take, it's a 7-8 year journey. I mean, I think management themselves very often are not open because they don't know, as CEOs, will my life be 7 to 8 years in this company or not? We have the luck to have family businesses or promoters who are there for the longer term, but I'd say that's something which really helps Indian companies in a certain way. We have as a rule in CET that our R&D percentage of sales and our marketing percentage of sale will not change irrespective of whether it's a bad year, good year. Raw material prices may go up and down, that's part of industry, but these two we try and keep the same. So largely, I'd say the third element is long-term thinking. So I'd say really to everyone here, in summary, I'd like to leave you with 3 messages. One is we have to ride the wave. This is our moment as the electricals industry, for the industry, for India, and really it's about this maybe decade and a half that we have. The second is on embracing excellence, which is build deep customer insight, invest in systems, focus on quality, and develop our people. And the third is think long term, investing in R&D, global expansion, and quality system. It pays off in the end. The future is really not something we enter, but it is something that we build. So let's build it together and build it with excellence. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm pretty mesmerized. At such a young age, Anand, so much of serious thought for food for thought for all of us here. Think long term, ride the wave, embrace the excellence, customer centricity, systems and practices. One very, very important thing, also very close to my heart, how to increase the percentage of our innovation, R&D expenses. So before I take some questions, a couple of questions come to my mind. Now, you are, as we discussed, you are now the 7th generation of this. There would of course be always times when one generation would like to do something newer, you know, and maybe not follow the same business, which is probably also being felt by many of our members from promoter company. So how is that resolved? How is that situation resolved so that the growth of the group continues, whereas newer businesses can also be taken up?
So I'd say we've passed on as 7th generation. I mean, we are the 7th generation in a way, but I'd say one of the positives or strengths that have happened, at least I can say in the case of my grandfather and my great grandfather, they decided to separate their kids. So my grandfather had 2 brothers. There were three kids that were there, and in my great grandfather's presence, he separated the 3 children. In the case of my grandfather, he also saw something similar where there were a lot of brothers fighting in industry. He said, I don't want my 2 kids to fight, and they were having they were working very well at that point, and he said, okay, I'm going to separate you all. And it was not so much in the will of the kids, but it was a visionary call looking at I'd say hindsight. So in a way, I think that has helped make a difference. I'd say we are also lucky to be a group of companies. The challenge very often can be tougher when you have a single company. To separate is tougher, but having a group, you can always say, okay, you know, 3 companies here, 3 companies there, and so on and so forth. So I'd say that is something that we had as a positive, which allowed much longer term growth. And I'd say in terms of future opportunity, I think absolutely, I think the next generation or the incoming generation, along with maybe the patriarch, I think at least in our case, I can say that I'm very open to sharing with my dad new ideas that are there, what we should think of doing. If he disagrees, we have a discussion, and most of the time, I would say 8 out of 10 we agree, 2 out of 10 we don't.
That's a very good answer. Thank you so much. So one more question, Rohit, before you also take care of the IT company in Sarda. And how do you see this, the AI wave is going across, not just impact IT, but it is hitting all other, it will impact all other industries. So what will be, in your opinion, the impact as far as the IT world is concerned, and as our industry, for example, the electrical industry?
So I'd say for the IT industry, there are 2 waves of thought. One is a little bit of gloom and doom, saying this is the end and things are going to be very tough. But the other is that technologies have come and gone, and the usage of that technology is going to be only multiplied as it gets adopted. You know, you may say, okay, email has come in, and so usage of phone call may not be higher, or you may say other forms of communication will change, and you'll have a lot of free time, for example. But we've seen the usage of email or the usage of new communications has only added. Earlier, we would maybe send 5 emails. Now we are sending 200 emails a day or 100 emails a day. So the usage of AI will only accelerate the growth of further use of technology and IT. So I think that, to me, I want to be in the second camp because I'm in the industry, and I think the adoption of AI will just considerably increase, which will allow IT to continue to grow and succeed. The second is impact on electrical industry. I'd say even on other industries. We may all become, I think, at least I could say we are thinking of, we may be a technology industry which also makes transmission towers, or we'll be a technology industry which also makes tires. But fundamentally, the core of a lot of the industries may be technology led. And so we have to embrace technology to a certain extent. I was talking to one of the founders of this company called Automation Anywhere. And he was saying that we are looking at merging 2 functions. We are thinking of merging maybe our HR and IT function and just having one single head. And maybe the IT head can become the HR head. to a certain extent. Now that is radical thinking. I mean, those are thoughts that never even entered my mind to a certain extent. But he's saying, no, if I'm able to improve the employee experience using tech, then why do I need an HR person to that extent? Or you don't need a CHRO, but you can have young HR guys to manage, but it all folds under IT. So it's unimaginable, I think, the kind of change that we will see.
Although I have many more questions in my mind, but I think I have to be fair to the audience here. So, Rohit.
So, hi, Rohit here. So, Anand, I think great, simple talk and frank talk, so thank you for that. One question for you, since a lot of members here are MSMEs, and one challenge that I see many of them always battling is how do you professionalize your company? And you know, I have interacted with RPG now for over 8-10 years, and I think you have done a fairly good job of how professionally the company is run. So as a promoter, what were the one or two most challenging things for you as you professionalize over the years? And what do you keep telling yourself that, look, this is something I will not get into to ensure that that professionalism continues in the company?
So I think my father, uncle, granddad, they professionalized before I came in as well. So I came into the industry around 2004, and I'd say around 95 was the time where we found that we had many joint ventures, many businesses, I believe something like 60, 70 businesses, which was not manageable by two brothers. My grandfather decided to retire at 60, so you had these the two young 35-year-olds approximately running the businesses, and that's when they said we can't do this. And then they decided to work with one of the leading consultants. I said that let's kind of work on how do we professionalize, and I think that model is still working. And largely the few things that I can say how we work, which I think is still going on, is that we have professional CEOs that lead all our businesses. They report into the family in a way, and there are certain elements where the rules are very clear as to where the family will get involved, which is largely in capital allocation of, say, certain thresholds, etc., that are there. There's a lot of people involvement in terms of senior people recruitment, culture, performance management systems, scoring increments, all of that. I think there's a fair amount of involvement, particularly at senior levels, that is still there. Personally, I spend more time now with customers directly myself, so you get a real flavor of what is happening, because we've had certain incidents in the past where suddenly you've had business showing negative growth, and sometimes leadership is not fully focused on customers, and that's where you get really the stories. So the top few customers I like meeting on a regular basis. I'd say these are the 3 or 4 things where it's very clear that the family will get more involved in, but everything else is largely left to the CEOs. And there's a certain, again, rhythm to the review. We have a monthly MIS that goes in where, say, the family will have a call with the CEO, and a quarterly skip level meeting, which happens with, so that's again a general business update that happens on some of these areas. And then strategy, of course, is another important element.
Super. Any last question? Yeah, Sunil.
I think another very nice talk. We talked about the short-term vision and long-term vision, and I think where most of the professionals struggle, even the MSME struggle, always focuses on this year growth, and they never think about 2 years and 3 years ahead. And ultimately, their growth is limited because of the short-term vision. And many of members are, confined to that typical government business and not thinking long-term how the India will shape up. What is your message to our members? How to think differently? Because you have to earn the today's revenue also, but think long-term also simultaneously. And there's a fine balance between the two.
No, so I'd say that one is I've never been in the shoes of an MSME, so it would not be fully fair for me to say and identify with all the pains that and challenges that an MSME would be fully going through. But as I can share, at least in our case, like in CEAT, I gave an example. Our R&D as a percentage of sale it will require very senior level approvals to make changes. Second is your marketing as a percentage of sale as an investment. We want to make sure that that investment happens, and that too doesn't undergo change. So revenue generally, gradually goes up. So that investment will continue to happen, I'd say, as a rule. And then I would say sometimes you have to let go of that half percent. Say, let's assume you're making 10% EBITDA margin. You know, it's okay sometimes if you feel does it make sense to make it 9 and put that 1% investment in AI, put that 1% in brand, put that 1% incremental in new product development for the future. So I find very often that focus is very, very high. And I'd say even within our own group, we find a diversity of culture. Like tech services is extremely quarter focused. I mean, way higher than any other business. And the entire focus of the leadership team in every meeting is still what is going to happen end of the month. You have to deliver your number. What are you going to make it happen? Whereas some other businesses is a lot more saying, okay, we want to get into data centers in the long term. How do we invest in that? So those are still challenges sometimes that are there. But if you have trust in the CEO, you have trust in the leadership, sometimes you let go. But I think as long as we ask the right questions, I think that's important.
Thank you, Anand, for your insightful talk. My one question to you is, you are at a threshold between youth and experience. One of the challenges that at least we see is how to blend that youth with its exuberance and experience with maybe sometimes a lot of set ways of working, perhaps sometimes not letting go, ego issues. So where do you find yourself and how do you handle that?
I can share with you one example that we have. Once again, we found that the young people in our companies are far more passionate about sustainability than the older people. And you know, they ask a lot more questions, they have a lot more seriousness and purposefulness in what they do. So we created a group called Green Stripes. And these are young people who are fully empowered to take decisions on sustainability on the company. Because we know that as, you know, 50, 55-year-old leaders of the company, say the executive committee or etc., the interest is a little bit less. So to that extent, we've empowered the younger group to do that. Second is, I'd say again, the changes in AI, we are all, I mean, including myself, are, you know, finance or MBA kind of background, or we are engineers, etc. We are not digital AI natives. So again, adopting that, I think we have to be humble enough to say we don't know anything. And how do we really think radically different? Because we all know how to use ChatGPT. We now do searches on ChatGPT, but that is just scratching the surface. So I think to that extent, as these changes happen, learning from the younger people, there are a lot of companies that have reverse mentoring where the CEOs or the leaders learn from the younger people on what is happening, and kind of letting go on some of these areas where there's dramatic change, or learning ourselves very fast. I'd say just invest in learning. I'd say, for example, I try and go to Silicon Valley once in 1-2 years to figure out what is happening. I want to go to China. I've now not gone post-COVID, but I think China is the other space where you can keep learning a lot about and actually seeing what is happening. I know our leadership in CIAT is going next month to China just to learn about how the level of change is that high. Now on AI, we have formal systems that we have where everyone has to go through a program on learning on AI in terms of what are the changes, and simple daily use programs. So I think the other is just kind of upping your own capability by learning more.
One last question. There's one hand there, so maybe two the last, if it's quick.
Yeah, very interesting insights you have given. And I have a very simple and a fundamental question. When one generation pass on the leadership to the another generation, and you are the one who has already gone through this particular phase, what is your advice to the older generation who is passing on to the younger generation, and what is the advice to the younger generation to taking the responsibilities from the older generation?
Whether they follow it or not is another thing.
No, that's a tough question, I'd say. advice to, I mean, the older generation, I would say would be around the areas as I shared, of just kind of learning what is happening. I mean, to me, I'd say, at least in the case of my father, he's technologically no less advanced than many of us, at least in terms of his use of social media, in terms of his use of other basic technology is fairly high. Maybe AI, etc., would be similar to many of us in that sense. So I'd say just kind of, but I'd say he has been very open to learning, figuring out what is happening. He attends lots of talks and events of what's going on in AI and so on. So I just say stay on board with that. And maybe to the younger generation would be respect the values that have been there over generations. There's a lot of young people may come in and say that, okay, I want to change all of this because I have a new way of working, but kind of just respecting the values, the belief systems, the wisdom that the older generation has. I think there's a lot of depth and maybe sometimes underappreciated.
Thank you.
New generation question.
Thank you. I learned a lot from your talk. My question is regarding professionalizing a company, because at some point when the family would like to take a step back from running the business and would like to professionalize, when searching for a CEO, do you consider taking someone who's already been within the company, or do you go outside the company and appoint someone as CEO? And what do you consider regarding the fact that someone from outside the business might change the fundamental identity of the business?
I'd say very clearly our preferences within the company. So I would say 70% of senior leadership, or if we can, every CEO, if we can get within the company, that is valuable. But of course, if there is a gap in terms of capability, we may choose to look outside. So very clear preference for all talent shifts within the organization should be within the company. So your second question, was there some?
Yeah, when you, the 30% that you do decide to get from outside the company, do you not consider the fact that you might run the risk that that individual might change the fundamental identity of your company?
Right. So that brings me to the point of excellence. So when you define what is your values as a company, what is your culture? No, earlier I would say in CEAT, if the leadership would change, the culture of the company would undergo a fair amount of change. You get a new HR head, you'll have new ways of doing HR, and you get somebody else new, they've learned something from their past company, they will try and adopt some of that. Now we have a very clear one way of management. And by one way doesn't mean every activity cannot undergo change, but the belief system that customer is at the heart of everything. There are certain systems and processes that have been adopted based on certain level of common sense with certain outputs that are there, long-term thinking, etc. I think that is fixed now. So if there's somebody who is trying to challenge that, that person will be ousted in no time from the company. Ousted means they will automatically find themselves a deep misfit and know that they're not, or they adapt and use the ways of, to the current ways of the company. So we have to have a very strong culture and one way of working in the company that we feel is the right way.
Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much. Although there are a lot of questions, but I don't want to ask more business questions. How do you unwind?
No, for me, I enjoy sports.
Tennis.
So for me, it is about more badminton actually.
Oh, no, it's badminton.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So between badminton and running, I think these are two things I spend.
I thought
some
it was
time
tennis,
on.
but anyway.
And
running and badminton.
Yeah, running and badminton, and I enjoy time with the kids. So that's my evening time or
Great.
breakfast with the kids. So these are two things.
Great,
that,
great,
I
great.
like, yeah.
So why I was asking, because I was seeing that you used to play tennis at one time. I also used to play tennis. Never made it anywhere. But and when I just heard you, I was reminded of who's your favorite tennis player? Let's say.
Djokovic.
Ah, okay. No, I would have said, if there is a Roger Federer in our business, charming, brilliant, and super, that's Anand Goenka for you.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you so much, everybody. So, Pragati, do you have anything? Over to you.
Thank you so much. And Gandotra sir, that was very apt. Roger Federer of the this business world, very, very good thing which you said. So thank you so much for this wonderful, refreshing session. And Mr. Goenka, next gen really has to learn a lot from you. I'm sure about it. We'll close this session now. I would request Mr. Gandotra to present memento to Mr. Anand Goenka. Thank you. I would request dignitaries on the dais to take the seats in the audience, please. And we'll right away go to our next segment. Yes, today we are having back-to-back sessions. So till my team is changing the setup here. Our next session is Fireside Chat, which is a special session with two industry stalwarts. And let's see what this Fireside Chat unfolds through the conversation. We are right away starting with the next session, so I would request our guests to be seated because we are not taking any break today. So my request to all the guests to please be seated. I request past President IEEMA, Mr. Rohit Pathak, to accompany our speakers, Mr. Hitesh Doshi, Chairman, Vari Energy Limited, and Mr. Madhav Das, Whole-Time Director, Larsen & Toubro Limited, to the dais, please. Till our speakers are taking the dais, I would request all our guests to be seated, please. We are right away starting with the session. And I request Mr. Rohit Pathak to formally introduce our speakers and start with the session. Thank you.
Yeah. So good. Please, guys, sit down. Thank you, Pragati. So look, I don't need to introduce both of these stalwarts. Just a quick note. So I think it's a privilege to have two very different leaders. One who's been an entrepreneur for 40 years and built what is now the largest solar manufacturing capacity outside of China, which by all means is a fantastic achievement. So Hitesh Doshi bhai. And on the other side, we have Madhav, who's also spent 40 years, I think just 40th year, right, Madhav? 40th year in a corporate world with L&T and, has built and has been a backbone of the T&D industry as we see in India today. I remember when I started my work at Insulators, he and Vimal, who's sitting here, were the two stalwarts I would look up to on what needs to be done in the industry. So I think we have two fantastic leaders who have a very long view of the industry. And we'll spend about an hour trying to understand how that journey has been and what do they see going forward. And more importantly, I think for a lot of you here, talk about what are some leadership lessons that we all can draw from how they have led their companies and also the industry. So, I think I'll start, with a little shorter question, but a generic question, which is lots changing. I think everyone is talking about change happening at a pace which we have never seen before. And by the way, I think every generation talks about it in the same way. I'm sure in 2000s also the talk was, oh, it's happening at too fast. And now we are saying it's again happening too fast. So as you see this industry and, maybe Madhav, you can go first and then I'll ask Hitesh bhai. What are the 2-3 real big things that you see happening as an industry for us?
Good afternoon to all. I think an honor and privilege to address, at least to air my views to such a stalwart sitting here. I think we are at one of the most complex, I will say, or most happening times. I will put it that way. I will look at this period as one of the most happening times, and as Mr. Anant was saying, that I think this is the best time for us to play. I think you have a huge landscape, huge canvas in front of you with so many things happening. And especially with electricity being the most centrally focused thing which will drive the whole growth, innovation, and it will make the world change. So I think we have a huge opportunity in front of us. Now, how do we grab this opportunity in each of the sectors we are in? That becomes the most critical aspect of it. I think I would put it this way, that we are in India where we are looking at being most self-reliant and trying to see how do we do it. So I will put some of the key things as innovation, as the most fundamental thing which we have to really look in. How do we adapt and embrace technology? And how do we use these digital things happening across to scale up the operations? I look at it that way. And then the most, I think, around what we are doing is the climate change, and how we tackle this thing is becoming important. And the way we are looking at electrical industry for that point of view becomes very critical. I put these small things at the center on which we can expand as we go about.
Sure. Hitesh bhai?
I think at Madhavji, first of all, thank you very much entire IEEMA team for inviting me and giving this opportunity. Madhavji has rightly articulated, and personally, whatever we all are in the business, 30 years, 40 years, I think we have not seen such opportunity. The demand side, technology side, changes every day morning, like we were discussing on the WhatsApp changes every day. The demand for the intelligence in that, most of the people who are in business for 30, 40 years here, they have not seen this has came now. And I personally see this is a huge opportunity. So on an industry perspective, and when it comes to the electrical side, anything we are talking about, it is going back to the power. It is the AI, it is the automation, it is a car, it is your food delivery. So when you wake up in the morning until night, I think the IEEMA is coming in the core, and that is, I will say, it is the biggest change in the industry.
Excellent, great. So, maybe let me just build on this. Both of you are running fairly global operations. I think, Madhav, you are looking at many regions from the L&T perspective. You have operations across the US and India and many other parts. How are you seeing India in the context of what's happening? And again, we don't need to get controversial, so we'll you can stay away from some sensitive topics. But I think generally, from as you see globally, because everyone keeps talking about, oh, it's a time for India, and I also do believe this is the time for India. But like both of you said, we need to innovate and do differently and not just copy. But how do you see India in terms of the pace of growth and how we are evolving versus what you see in other parts?
The way I will talk from the way we have been doing business and the way we have been looking at this emerging opportunities. First thing is, you have to be very clear that India is your centric. The way we do things, India becomes the fulcrum for us. Because here is where we have our talent, we have emerging, we have the largest landscape in electrical industry. If you have to look at transmission, distribution, substation, AI, data-driven, data centers, solar, anything that is happening in the world, it is happening here. And if it is happening here, you have people around it. You can develop a whole set of talent across it. We have one of the best engineering backgrounds. We have one of the best across the whole education spectrum. We have everything. So you can develop a system which will really work across. And now when electricity is really becoming the focal point across the world, many of these places, the development has taken back around about 40 to 50 years back. Now you require these sort of talent which we have. So that means you have a pool of talent here. Now how do you go and establish there? That is a long-term thinking. It doesn't happen. I think one thing when we have to look at abroad is when you're going abroad or expanding your operations, it is not just a hit and run. It is a very long-term process. You have to look at who is the best people you will put, who will bring that ethos and culture of the organization there, how will they assimilate into the local culture, how will they manage the local sentiments, all these things come in. So to me, I think we are at the best place. We have the best of everything here, and how do we go there? That requires a little different outlook. So you have to put your best people there. And what happens is there, one thing is these are very open markets where you see the whole world's technology coming in. So you have a ground where if your best people go, they start absorbing and they start scaling up. You can bring them back and again expand. So that's the way I look at it.
Hitesh bhai, any thoughts?
I think I'll see from the outside first.
Yes.
Probably that if you look to the outside, and I will say in the electrical industry, probably we take one country, say Spain, the number of air conditioners in Spain today, probably we'll be adding it every year here. Or we look to the Modi ji's speech last week, how many families have came up. So if you look to the market size globally, if we leave now China, which is normally no entry for us, and United States for certain reasons, India is probably the largest market we have. And the economy, in terms of absolute value, we are increasing on the percentage if we leave apart. That is close to some countries' GDP now. So when we see this country from outside, how many vehicles we are adding every month and how many vehicles they are adding, I think that difference is huge. Coming back to the country, locally, when we are talking about the number of engineers we are coming out from the universities, that is the total number of the children are there in the education. So globally, the age, when we look to the, like Madhavji said about it, at our age of our engineers. So you put your finger anywhere from outside or inside, the opportunities again, which I've mentioned earlier, both the side. Only the question is the right fitment, getting the right people for you want to sit from outside or you want to expand there, and you want to do the right, you want to take the right results from the local population there. I think these challenges are also there with the good side.
But let's say, you have a plant in Texas, you have obviously in India a lot of operation. Do you think of these two and how you run them very differently, or is there a core ethos which is very similar, and obviously local talent adjustments you have to do on this, but is there a big difference in how you look at these two operations and how do you build these operations?
I think it's completely the different way. He has already mentioned about it, how to work in the local culture, the local way, and also do the business probably where your 10% workers have the gun in their car when they are coming to the work. So, right? So you have to adopt these things. He has correctly mentioned that, and you need that kind of the people to identify here who can go there and understand. And outside the factory's camera, we had this incident 2 days back in Houston factory. The person took out the gun from his car, particularly Texas is very famous for it, and he just moved like this, and people on the camera inside they're seeing it. And if there's an Indian sitting there, going first time to the US, right? So these challenges are there, and we have to find the ways in this.
But, sorry, you were saying something, Madhav?
I will put it this way, yes. I think, again, this was a point which Anand brought it out very clearly, saying that processes and systems have to be there. I think if you want to scale up, otherwise you will remain small. If you want to scale up in a new environment, you cannot take everybody from here. Yes. You have to use the local talent available. They have their own way of looking. But if you have a model which has been successful somewhere, you have a lot of learnings from it. So that process and systems have to be brought in. You have to set very clear guardrails when you start your work there. So this is what we have been seeing. And then once you set this, you have to empower them. You can't be micromanaging it out. You will have to learn to handhold them and leave it to them to manage. Yes, there will be ups and downs. That is where the leadership skill comes in to step in at the right moment when there is a crisis and retrieve the situation. Yes. I look at it that way.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think a very good point. So just one other question on the global macro picture that I had. You know, again, coming back, looking at India, there is always two schools of thought in India. There's still too much of hype and not enough happening on the ground. Whereas now, I think slowly people are beginning to see actual reality of a lot of action to be done in India. Do you see, are you still very bullish about how India's story is going to pan out? Or do you have some question marks still in terms of where we are headed? Because there are enough challenges that we have as a country. You know, every second, there's some new geopolitical issue that comes in, and we'll come to geopolitics a little bit later. But do you see the strength of the India story as firmly there, or is it something that you feel is just ahead but not there yet?
Let me put it this way. If you have seen the last 5 years back, maybe I would have had a doubt about India's story. But going forward, as we have been now shifting gears, I think there's a lot more clarity coming on what finally has to be done in India. What is the sort of support we should take from outside? I think that sort of clarity has come in very clearly. And I think we have also started identifying the long-term trends which will help India to become the next superpower. So I think that is the most critical part which we have done. Till now we were trying to establish and develop a sort of a base, but now we have started looking beyond that. We have started looking at long-term trends. What is it that will, what the world is going to happen after 10 years, whether are we building it up, which many of the nations had done in the past, but we have started doing it. So there is where the story is. And we all sitting here, electrical is the fulcrum for it. And if we don't do that, I think we are missing it out. So I think it is necessary that we all start looking in that direction, that what is the long-term trend? Are we aligned with it? If we are not aligned, what should we do in our own small manner to get into it? So to me, India's story is there in the making. And if we as a nation, we as people believe that India is going to be the next superpower, I think we have to put where money, where the cards are really there. I will put it that way.
Well said. Rishabh, anything you want to add?
For a growth of any country, I think it starts with the people and the people's mind and their aspiration. So when we look to the today's youth or people working in your organization or our organizations, the aspiration level of the people at the age, maybe we take 25, and the difference today and 10 years back is completely different. So when the growth aspirations have increased to the 10x, a country definitely going to grow. That's what I believe on that.
Well said. And I think I also see this whole entrepreneurship at the college level, just at a scale which is completely different. You know, if you go to any college campus, and my son has just gone to BITS, you walk around BITS, everyone is thinking about a startup at college, not after taking the job. So I think that part I can definitely see.
This was not there probably when we were in college.
Exactly. You just thought of a job.
That aspiration was also not there, that what I want to be and at what level. So this growth mindset, I think it has started from this age now.
You're saying? No. So let me move to the next question on, both of you again run very global type of businesses. And with this geopolitics that is happening around supply chains,
Is that something that really worries you on how do you plan even for the coming year, right? Because there's so much is changing, supply chains are getting disrupted, shipping lines are, sometimes it's okay and suddenly it can take 2 months longer. Is that something which is worrying either both of you a lot, or is it something that you have just got used to it and saying, look, we'll go through it?
There's nothing called getting used to complexities. I put it this way. I think one of my office, my executive assistant, he used to put a word to me saying that there's some, or maybe it's a standard term which many of you hear. He always used to say, observe, orient, decide, act. Now, this in today's environment becomes very, very critical. That means with so much of change happening, you can't be having a very clear, dedicated plan. You have to keep observing, you have to keep orienting yourself, you have to decide how to and act at the right moment. So that means you have to have a situation where, like any government or any organization, you should have multiple levels of plans where there are fallbacks, where there are decisions taken that if this happens, I'm going to take this. It may not be the correct decision, but you have a direction on which you can proceed and see whether you can do some course correction. So I will say that you have to be well prepared. There is nothing called gut feel and all those things. Today the changes are so fast and so unpredictable, erratic, that you have to plan certain things. You should have a set of people who can look at this chaos and decide, yes, I will try to do this in this manner. I think that is the way I look at it, my business. That's the way I have been doing it.
How many levels of backup plans do you make?
Today we may have at least up to N-3 we have, but not more than that.
Okay.
Incredible. This is a difference probably the professionally run companies and the owners runs companies.
Just say that sometimes, you have a set of people looking with a different view, possibly, but where decision making comes in your type of business, I think somewhere we have a little more bureaucracy in professionalism, whereas you have the advantage of taking a very decisive action. I will put it at that.
Fair enough. So maybe let me just build on this, because it's a very important point. You have gone ahead and built something of a scale which very few Indian companies have done in an environment which has been full of chaos in terms of what's happening on the price front, on the cost competitive front, technology front. How have you gone about it, and how did you have that bold conviction that karenge and hoga? Because I'm sure there would have been enough uncertainties as you have gone along this way.
I think first is a belief what you are doing. We started from instrumentation. There was a strong belief we could take a good market share there. We came into the different businesses, solar was, and it became a conviction that one day this will become a much larger than what we are thinking. Like we were discussing about for next 10 years for the electricity or other markets where we will be. So it was always a conviction. And then scaling up. Industry was thinking to grow by 30%, 40%. We were thinking, why not to do 10x? And what is the risk behind it? And can we play with this risk? And that is the advantage of even a smaller organization. That one day you have decided you want to go for X capacity, and next day morning you think you want to increase by 2x. That flexibility brings to the smaller organization, helps, and you can do that quickly. So conviction in a business, what you are doing, and how much time you are spending on that business, probably that helps you to take such decisions.
But tell me, solar has been, or renewables in general, still remains in the cloud of saying, yes, everyone says it's important, but there are enough naysayers who will say beyond this point, now we cannot stabilize the grid, so beyond this you can't take. It's still too dependent on government support, which is always, moves a little up and down in terms of, whether you'll get some subsidy or some scheme which will make it viable. In that context, how do you orient yourself to say, okay, let me go 3x and invest behind it, it'll come?
See, today we don't have any technology which can beat the solar in terms of the economics, speed and safety. There are challenges that you get only the certain hours of the power, and storage was a challenge. To meet, the companies came forward, they started investing, and we are seeing where the batteries has reached today in terms of the economics and all that. And a lot of new technologies are coming. We need energy. The energy demand of whatever the in form it is increasing. They are putting it more. So
Yeah,
they
AC,
are,
can you
they,
reduce?
they are,
Can you stop the AC,
they,
please, guys?
No, they feel that
I know.
the demand is growing and they
Yes.
want to show it, so don't worry about that. But then what is you have? If you don't have the solar, what else you have which can be deployed so fast, safely, and you also get that cost of it. So personally, I think that till we don't see that kind of a technology coming in, even at the lab scale somewhere, you are convinced that solar to chalega. Challenge is the storage. Batteries have came up, pump storage is coming up, and we'll find some other ways also to use some machines at that time with more automation and more intelligence, and the demand will try to increase when we have a lower price of the generation. So that is a strong conviction to us which we are expanding in this.
But do you feel the storage will come up in time to cater to what you are building? Because I think many, and as a user, we also at times, while we are trying to scale up our green, we are now getting to the level where we are saying beyond this, we cannot go green unless we have storage. And slowly now we are seeing some storage elements coming up, but they're still not very reliable. So, either of you, if you want to just share.
I'll just talk from an EPC point of view of Middle East market. There's a project coming up where they are already, it has become reality. They are putting up 20 gigawatt hour of battery at a single location and having 1 gigawatt of round the clock supply. So it is a reality. Means people have started looking at it in a very big way. In one single location, just imagine 20 gigawatt hour, and this will be commissioned in the next 18 to 20 months. Whole of Middle East has decided to go on a battery in a big way. Every substation of theirs, batteries are coming up. They have, I think, really looked at it in a different way. And India has now, if you see the last 4 or 5 months, the amount of battery tenders that have been coming out, I think we have started realizing that it is necessary. So I don't see that this is a flash in the pan, let me put it there. This is going to stay. It will only improve upon, and how fast as organizations we start adapting to it, how fast we start getting into it, what can we do for it, will be our survival. There's no doubt about it.
Fair enough, I think. You want to add anything to it? No. Okay. So, I think let me move to the next phase, which I think everyone is talking about, this whole AI space. And, I was just telling Madhav that tomorrow we are going to go and see your command and control center, which you have at L&T, which I believe is quite a impressive setup. So, I think this whole AI, digital, central controlling to see what's happening is now growing well. In your businesses, how aggressively are you going after AI as a core part of your business processes and systems?
Let me put it this way. If we say that AI is not going to affect you, I think we are like an ostrich putting our head down.
Yes.
How do we enable it? How do we scale it up for your operation? I think there is where the skill comes. Finally, we are in an EPC business or manufacturing where you require hardcore brick and mortar work to be done.
Yes.
But how do we adapt technology into it becomes impossible. So just let me give you an example. In construction industry, about 5 to 6 years back, we had nearly 2 to 3 lakh assets spread across maybe 1,000 sites. How do you get performance monitoring of them? We brought in IoTs and we started enabling them, started collecting data and started doing analytics. So now we come to know that which machine is idle for how long, for which time, what sort of work can be done to get improved. So we have to start merging that AI into your work. So we have decided as an organization that we have to create algorithms for different use cases. We have 108 to 110 algorithms in the making with large set of people working on different cases. The best planning, the best way to look at it is how can you use AI to create strong planning tools, strong predictability of how the project will go if there is an issue. which is much quicker and it gives you many alternatives. So it's a matter of time that we do, and how do you take this technology to do construction work in a better way? I think it's happening, and we are seeing that happening in a big way. So always they say that construction is the dinosaurs of the world, but even dinosaurs, once it starts moving, it accelerates. I think we are in that phase now.
Hitesh bhai, you?
I think personally for the audience, I'll say that if you have not started taking the AI class, I'll request you to start it. I have taken few and I'm going to continue take it. And then probably we'll understand what Madhavji is talking about, that if we are not going to learn the AI, or if we think that AI will not affect to me or my business, I think we are out of it. So it's affecting every aspect of the life. Wherever you want to put it. You want to put it for quality in your small factory, large factories, the tools are available. You want to put it to your design. Recently we have invested in one transformer company, and very senior members were sitting with me. And we were discussing about the transformer design and all that. I am anyway commerce graduate, so I do not understand much. So I opened the one AI in front of them and I said, you tell me now what you want. You want bill of material, you want design of the transformer, you want the losses. And they said, sir, ये तो हमने देखा नहीं था. We are in a transformer industry for 30 years plus. So if you have not done it, my request is please start it at least 2 hours a week, and probably a month back, we don't need to discuss this question.
Wow. No, I think very, very well said. And I think maybe just building on this point, you know, one of the challenges many of us are also facing at Hindalco, we also have a similar issue at times, is the people who have been around for 20, 30 years, who have been loyal, who have built what you are today, they are still struggling to make this shift in their mindset. Whereas the youngsters who are coming in, they are natively coming with this mind. How are you looking at this mix and getting the experienced folks, you know, to wake up to this thing that, look, things are changing, you have to learn how to handle this?
I think if collectively if we sit here, the amount of wisdom we carry in this room is phenomenal. And wisdom comes with what?
Baggage.
Wisdom comes with the saying that you have the ability to step back and think, am I doing the right thing? I think all of us at this age, we know. And I think the best experience many of us carry is your own children. When you put a problem to them, the way they look at that problem and solve it, and the way we solve it is very different. So that gives you a different orientation, saying that you are working in a different era. Try to change yourself. I think if you don't change, today competition is going to outcast you, because you have, in every industry, you have startups, you have mid-sized companies which are much more agile. And when you become large, if you are not agile, you are lost out. So I think all of us in this room will start realizing that if you don't change, you are going to be swept aside and somebody else will take your place. So it is in your own survival that we will change. So I don't see any reason for not changing, but the only thing is, possibly we have to keep our ego aside and say that, yes, I don't know this, I have to learn it. I think that is where, like he told, we have to learn it.
So what we have done practically, every 2 or 3 days we are making a small videos and sending to the executives. And weekly we are trying to pull them for 1 hour, 2 hours trainings on a various AI tools, how they can help you. So once, I'll give the classical example of our CHRO. Today, after 3 or 4 months of pursuing, he started sending me at least once in a week now, something which he has learned and how he's using. So the people who are above 50s, I will say this is a challenge. So if you start with little bit, slowly, and then put them on a front, I think it's coming up.
Great. So maybe, you know, I think let me move on to some leadership lessons. Finally, I think we've got it going. You know, Hitesh bhai, the way you have scaled up, what are the, you know, and with the conviction with which you went, and like you said, you are not an engineer, you've built something which is very, while yes, it's a business, but it's also manufacturing intensive. What are the 2-3 leadership lessons you have for building something of this scale? You know, because many entrepreneurs here are in, you know, have run businesses in the 200, 2,000 crore
revenue range for a long time and have not made the next leap of, I think now you are a 1 lakh crore plus company, if I'm not wrong, right? How have you built this? What are the 2-3 things that you think have helped you in this journey in how you built this?
I think we have to ask people working with me, but let me try to find the difference. The difference, I think, is the thinking. At 1,000 crore, if we do not think I want to be at 10,000 crore, normally we think that 30% growth, 40% growth is a good enough. This was a story for instrumentation we had when I started in the pressure gauge business. We are making a 40 pressure gauges per day. I went to China and I have seen their scale and I came back. हमको 4,000 बनाना है. Now it starts. 40 बना रहे हो, 4,000 बनाना है, बेचोगे क्या, करोगे क्या? All these things start up. So biggest difference first is what is the level you put in front of your team. And we made it. We took close to a 55% market share in pressure gauges. A small mechanical instrument, but we could do it. And that's what in solar, we were at 2 gigawatt. I said, I mean, less than 500 megawatt. 1 second में एक panel बनाना है, कैसे बनाएंगे? So today it is a reality. That is a different thing that you need that kind of, this is a volumetric item, logistics, all that, supply chain and all. So that is the first difference. Second difference, I think the decision making. I call in a Bombaya language, abhich and idarich. So that word in our organization, so we'll make a loss, it's fine, but take the decision and close it now. So scale, decision, and third is, I think, closer to the customer. Then you understand the market pulse, and based on that, you try to plan yourself. So that will be 2-3 things.
Madhav, from your side, you know, and I have had the privilege of interacting with A.M. Nayak for some time, and like that passion that he carried was like an, I think, entrepreneur. As L&T has professionalized over the years, how do you keep that entrepreneurship going in the organization?
I think as an organization, we have the ability or agility to differentiate on certain things. In the sense, there is the usual business which goes. You require a set of people for that. So how do you identify that and do it? At the same time, we have certain processes in the organization where we identify very, very young talents at very young age. We start looking them at very different ages, and we try to then start identifying a group of people, giving them specific training, and we keep pushing them into very tough assignments and tell them that this is not a test of your ability, but this is a opportunity being given that we are trying something new with you. If you fail, it has nothing to do with your career prospects. You still grow, but we give them a lot of freedom and allow them at very young age, breaks hierarchy and give them positions. So that brings out a little entrepreneurship growth in an organization, because otherwise when you have a system and process very rigid, it becomes very bureaucratic. So this we do at 2 levels. We keep identifying people. There is a huge amount of discussions on succession planning, on N-1, N-2, we keep looking at it. And the most important thing is, if there is any new assignment, I think the most critical and the most important decision what is made is who is going to be the leader. I think it entirely depends on that person who leads, whether once you give him a clear boundary, guardrails, it is left to that leader to succeed in it with it. So for us, that becomes the way of, as an organization, to keep growing.
And you are explicitly able to tell them that, look, it's tough, but we want you to try it.
Yes,
right?
we are
many
very
organizations don't do that. You know, you give internally as a leadership, you think of your leadership pipeline, you'll give them some assignments, but many times that person is left thinking, you know, what's happening to me.
And there's a lot of hand-holding also that goes on. A lot of mentoring program, mentorship happens, and it is cross-mentoring. That is, if somebody works under me, he's mentored by somebody else so that he doesn't get influenced by my decision. He gives his view to that person, takes him as a sounding board, listens it out, and that does. So that is the way we as an organization have decided to grow this thing.
And you interact with, I think almost everyone. I think as L&T, probably there's no one here who would have not done business with you. As you look at this ecosystem of entrepreneurs and members that we have here, what are the one or two things that you would like to tell them on how should they think about, what's coming up?
Leaving the leadership aside, as an industry, we have to get into a mode where people look upon you with respect. I think that comes from real quality in whatever we do. That is that so-called, what he said, excellence in what we do. I think that becomes the most important. Today, when you go abroad, we have still not reached a stage where they just accept you saying that you are the best organization in terms of process or in terms of product, in terms of execution, in terms of timeliness. I think that is something which, as a country, we have to get really scale up. That quality is something, safety is one thing. These are two things, if we can really master, I think we have the whole world open to us, because the pricing is a derivative. You will start learning how to manage within a given sales price, you will bet. But if this quality and safety comes into me, I think that brings respect to the whole set of organizations. People will start looking in a different way.
I agree.
I put it that way.
No, and I must echo this. I remember when I joined ABG and I was in the chairman's office, I was looking at many projects. And I could distinctly see the difference in projects being done by L&T and some others, where the focus on safety and quality was at a very different level with L&T.
What happens is it brings a little discipline into each of us when you do safety and quality as the fulcrum. And once discipline comes, whatever you do, whether it is your regular process also, you start doing it in a very systematic way. So then there is an end result to it. That's the way I look at it.
Very well said. Hitesh bhai, on this, quality and safety, any thoughts from you? Because quality is again something where in India we see many times people just compromising to get the product out, right? And it's something which has been, even in IEEMA, we've had multiple debates of, that we're not doing enough on getting the quality and brand of our companies to a level where we should now start moving towards. How do you think about it, and what's worked for you?
I think without quality, if we are thinking the growth, then we are thinking the disaster. If you put in one line, so if you want to grow, even you want to double your production, forget about the 10x. And if you're thinking it without quality, you're planning for a very good disaster then.
And how do you enforce it in the organization? Because I'm sure, under the pressure of targets, people will, people end up compromising at times. And that's a culture that you build over time, right? So it's not easy to build that culture.
Actually, my strategy was to start business with the export. You look to the pressure gauges also, or whatever, or with the people who are making in their country to make their products in their brand in our factory, and just offering them the price advantage. So in all the businesses we have gone, it may be the valves or whatever the name you put it, the advantage was that from the day one, the people were knowing that this is for export. Now, product is product. What happens on a shop floor, the thinking completely changes. When you talk about domestic, I'm talking about 30 years back, 1989 or 90 onwards when we started. Same happened in a solar. And then investing in the organization. So any business we have started, the first thing we have started is creating a large test labs. And most of them were the largest in the country. NABL accreditation, whatever you name it, UL, IEC, all that. And so customer, when he comes, he understands, and the people get that access to the lab to test them, and the people also get into the mindset. And all the discussions you do with your executives, you tell them कि boss delivery के लिए और quality के लिए मुझे phone आया किसी का, तो तुमको कुछ और करना पड़ेगा, यहाँ तुम्हारे लिए जगह नहीं है. Price के लिए let the customer call me 100 times, right? Payment के लिए, that is fine. So that executive also gets the idea from day one कि यहाँ customer का अगर phone गया तो मुझे तकलीफ होने वाला है. So such small things, when you are not a large organization, you don't have with ISO 9000 on those days was like a first to come in and all that. But you start talking like this, that culture goes on the ground.
Excellent. So I'll ask one last question, and then we'll open it to some questions. So please start thinking about a question. I'm giving you a heads up. The last question I had for both of you is, can you share one real tough challenge you have faced in the last few years, and what has helped you get through it? Because, you know, in all our businesses, we have gone through ups and downs, you know, and I'm sure in your 40 years each, you have seen enough ups and downs. So maybe something that you may want to share, because I think the lot of learning comes from some of those tough things. In hindsight, it looks good, you learned, but when you're going through it, it is very, very challenging. So maybe just one example of a real tough problem or, you know, your business went through that you now come out of, but in hindsight, you learned a lot.
I think we built various businesses, we closed many, so a lot of learning was there. But what has changed the organization, and that learning became, that belief became a very strong as we were exporting solar panels to United States, and India market was zero. Almost 99% panels were coming from China. During the COVID, all the deliveries in United States are the door deliveries, duty paid. Like during the COVID, the orders value and the loss due to the all shipping costs and all that was equal to that. And it was very sure that we are going to lose. This was the second time in a solar for us. First time the capital was less, and this time that we are going to finish entire capital. And with 2-3 people, we sat together and said, "Kya karna hai?" So we said, "Boss, we have committed to the customer. Whatever it takes, let us first deliver it to it." And that was probably a biggest learning. At that time, there was an opportunity to us like all other suppliers, particularly the Chinese companies. They went back to the customers, they changed the prices, they changed the contract and all that. And we took that call. And with that call, after finishing that, we talked to the customer that we've lost this much money and all. So they said to make 0, how much you need, forget about your profit. And they said, I will give you more than it. And within 8 months, we had a close to a $4 billion order book with $1 billion advance without any guarantees or any check. But that 3 to 4 months or 6 months of the company that you're losing entire your capital of the company in this one transaction. That was, I think, a tough time, but that has changed the company in a big way, and our belief became a much stronger.
Fantastic, fantastic experience. Madhav, anything?
I'm now talking from a professional organization point of view. Every business has ups and downs. Like I will just give an example of, we entered solar business in 2008 as an EPC contractor. Our first job was 15 megawatt of job, and we have been doing that for up to 2020. We were still going with that sort of scale, and we scaled up from 2020 to 25, and today we do 30 gigawatt of, I'm talking of from 15 megawatt, we have scaled up to 30 gigawatt of EPC jobs. Now, why did it happen? One was the customer centricity, as you said. We went through very difficult times, but we always projected to the customer saying that we will deliver this job at any cost. So that created a lot of confidence in customers that here is an organization which will scale up. And the most important what happens is when you have such projects or such works going on, the management has to back you up. That is the senior most person should have a belief in this set of things happening that they will deliver. I think the backing gives you the biggest strength to take risks and complete it out. For me, that has been the learning, that once you put somebody in a job, back him up 100%. Give him the full support to ensure that the work gets done, and then it happens.
Fantastic. That's great. So any questions from Rajat and then Kabraji?
Thanks. Thank you for very insightful comments. This is a question for you, Hitesh Bhai, Rajat Gupta from McKinsey. The world is getting quicker and faster, right? We talked in the previous session about AI also enabling some of that. In your industry particularly, where the technology changes every 3 to 5 years, you touched on this in terms of how do you cope with that change. But this is true of batteries, this is true of many of the new areas. Can you give us some more tangible ideas on how do you really anticipate what the change is going to be? How do you deal with this in businesses like this, which will encounter a lot of change in the next couple of decades?
I think when you're closer to the customer, personally I spend a lot of time with the customers. So you understand, for example, in solar, the idea is a kilowatt hour. What the lowest bid he can win and he can work for us. So for that, what the industry will need? Industry will need a more power in a 2 square meter of the panels. So maybe 8-10 years back, we understood that GT is going to come and we started working on that. Same time, you have to be aware in your factory that these machines are going to be absolute in 3 years. So when you are investing in technologies, even if you put a solar cell factory today, which probably maybe 10 gigawatt will cost you 6,000 crore, you know that out of this 3,000 to 4,000 machines, I need to change. So if two things are clear in your mind, that you have to bring what customer wants and what he's every day asking, that the last PPA was this and now next is this. So you start working in that direction. Another thing, you know that the industry you are in, the shelf life is not more than 3 years, and that makes you more confident in that.
It is my question, because many of our members, they made their company listed. We are also listed company, but the last 5-7 years में इंडिया में कल्चर जो खराब हुआ है, जो मेरे को दिखता है, जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ प्रॉफिट बढ़ाने के लिए और वैल्यूएशन बढ़ाने के लिए बहुत सारी लिस्टेड कंपनियां जो है अपने क्वालिटी में बहुत कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर रही है, और हमारी इलेक्ट्रिकल इंडस्ट्रीज में और खासकर वायर एंड केबल इंडस्ट्री में बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है. जस्ट टू इंक्रीज प्रॉफिट एंड क्रिएट अ वैल्यूएशन, ये बहुत गलत काम था. मीन्स कंट्री इज गोइंग वन वे इज राइट डायरेक्शन, ग्रोथ चल रहा है हमारा, विकसित भारत की बात करें, आत्मनिर्भर भारत करते हैं, लेकिन कहीं ना कहीं ये जो पैसे कमाने की होड़ में और वैल्यूएशन करने के चक्कर में भारत की कई सारी कंपनियां गलत डायरेक्शन में चल रही है. इसके लिए क्या मैसेज आप देना चाहते हैं? इट्स अ बिग चैलेंज एक्चुअली, हॉनेस्टली गोइंग टू बी लॉन्ग टर्म, इंडिया के लिए अच्छा नहीं है, लेकिन बहुत तकलीफ हो रही है.
So you're asking me, I'm sitting with next to the L&T, जिन्होंने कहा कि नींद कैसे चाहिए आपको. बहुत सिंपल शब्दों में मैं कहूँ आपको इसको, तो वो आपको डिसाइड करना है. लॉन्ग टर्म गेम प्लान करना है या शॉर्ट टर्म करना है. नींद कैसे चाहिए? पैसा इज्जत वाला चाहिए कि पॉकेट मार वाला चाहिए? कुछ बहुत सिंपल प्रिंसिपल्स है, कोई रॉकेट साइंस नहीं है इसमें. और ये छोटे छोटे प्रिंसिपल्स मुझसे ज़्यादा आप लोग जानते हैं. इसको अगर आप सेट कर लेते हो तो वैल्यूएशन, आप हमारा केस देख लीजिए, राइट. सोलर इंडस्ट्रीज में मॉड्यूल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कोई डालने को तैयार नहीं था, और आज मार्केट ने हमको क्या रिस्पांस दिया है. एक ही चीज़ हमने रखी, जो है वो है, ट्रांसपेरेंटली हम मार्केट को बताते गए. जो करना चाहते थे उससे हमने ऑलवेज एक कंजर्वेटिव नंबर बताया, क्योंकि हम इसको सोलर कॉस्टर कहते हैं इंडस्ट्री को. अगर आप लोग थोड़ा ज़्यादा डीप में स्टडी करोगे तो आइडिया आएगा कि हर 3 साल में 1 डजन से ज़्यादा कंपनी ग्लोबली बैंकरप्ट होती है. तो वो सारी चीज़ें जब ट्रांसपेरेंसी और ऑनेस्टी के साथ, क्योंकि इन्वेस्टर्स मेरा ऑलवेज मानना रहा है, क्योंकि मैं भी थोड़ा बहुत इन्वेस्टरों के साथ कम्युनिटी में घूमता हूँ, तो समझ में आता है सबसे ज़्यादा होशियार कम्युनिटी ये है जो मेहनत आपसे करवा के हमसे ज़्यादा पैसा बनाती है. उसका कोई टाइम नहीं है ऑफिस जाने का. वो साल में 4 वेकेशन ले सकते हैं, उनको जब चाहिए तब छुट्टी मिलती है, और जब चाहिए तब आपको आके क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं. तो अगर हम समझते हैं कि हम उनसे होशियार हैं और हम बैलेंस शीट में कुछ गड़बड़ करके कुछ कर लेंगे, आई थिंक हम उनको समझ नहीं पाए. तो बहुत सिंपल भाषा में मैं कहूँ तो ये सारी चीज़ें.
Well said. So,
we are a standing example. We have been in this industry for last 80 years. Infrastructures, companies have come and gone, but we are still there standing tall because we take a very long-term view. There is nothing called short-term view on anything. Long-term view, how do you very dedicatedly follow that up? Yeah, there will be course corrections during the period, but I think you have to take a long-term view. On long run, that is what finally gives you the result. And that gets you respect. And once respects come, people come to you for getting jobs done. So
and I think, like you also said, look, investors are fairly sharp, and there are 2 types of investors. Some people who are in for the long run, some who are opportunistically saying, okay, they're working for the quarter, I will make the money and go out. I'm not a long-term investor in that stock. So that, I think, is also very clear.
Sir, one
Kamal? Someone else had a mic? Sorry, sir. Oh, sorry.
I have the mic.
Yeah.
I have a question for Dr. Doshi, sir. Actually, nowadays a lot of solars are coming, and equally, once the life of the panels are over, it is going to create a lot of e-waste. So does companies coming up with some solution to it, or can anybody see it as a business in future that collection of this or recycling of these e-waste can be seen it as a perspective. Second, my one more question is there. Nowadays, technologies are changing at a very fast rate. As you said, like in previous answer, that you need to have a setup for eyeing for 3 years only. So, is it possible for a company to eye for such a short period? Like you need a basic infrastructure changes to bring the technology in panels. So, how do you manage that?
No, so on the e-waste side, I can answer the question for you. We are coming up with the first e-waste plant in India to be able to handle all types of electronic waste, which will be able to take in 80,000 tons in the first phase of e-waste of all types. And that will be commissioning next year. By this time, hopefully it should be running. But feel free to add. And
we are venturing into the recycle, started a small thing and that already, and now expanding it. So recycle business is definitely going to be there. A business which you select, and you know that which is every day the new innovations, research are happening. Probably you name any good university globally, they are working on the solar or batteries or whatever you name it. So at least you understand something is going to come, when and how, and if you are not prepared for it, you will be out. So when you choose the industry, you have to decide how fast the changes are coming, how many people are working across the globe on this, and what will come up. And if you are not ready, then you are gone. So you have to be there.
Sir, last question from Kamal.
Just supplement to his question, whatever he said just now, and also to the answers, whatever you said. Few minutes back, it was told that if you want to grow, you have to think of quality. Otherwise, it will become a disaster. Now, I think this statement needs to be changed. It is not only quality, it is 3 Ps, profit, people, and planet. So, I think this statement has to be changed. So, do you have anything to say in that? It is not a question, it is a statement.
So whichever the things are there, the pillars of the organizations, the business is to make a continuous more and more money. So profit comes there, and you cannot run the business. So how, in what context you are asking the statement and question, it will change it. If you are looking to only the people angle, I'll say you have only the 2 hands and 24 hours. Do it yourself or get millions of hands and millions of hours. So which angle you look to particular issue, you will have the answer in that direction.
Kamal?
This is Kamal Golia. I am from Micro Instruments and also a NEC member at IEEMA. On a very lighter note, solar panels, solar cells, solar inverters, transformers, smart meters. What next?
The energy transition is what I'm looking for. So next will be more on the software side, at the management side. And if there are the opportunities we get on investing in such a companies which we could invest in last few months, like last week it was more on a heating and cooling side. So we invested in that. So in energy transitions, wherever we get such opportunities, we'll continue to look in.
There's one question from there, I think. Yeah. Mike.
Hello, yeah, I'm giving you, ma'am. I'm Mr. Udas from Modern Insulators, and my question is for Mr. Madhav Das. Now, he said that there has to be some systems and processes which has to be developed within the organization to face this scale up. Now, scaling up is anyway happening the way market is. Now, can you just elaborate on what are the systems and processes which are to be incorporated into the organization? Thank you.
You are looking at chaos, and I think it's a pretty, when I say system and processes for every level, if I'm going to identify a market, I have a way of looking at it. If I'm going to do a work there, what is that? I think it's a pretty elaborate things, which I think as an organization over a period of time, you learn and keep incorporating it. And it's what shall I say, it's an ever evolving process. Means every time you do something new, you learn something, you course correct it out. So it's a pretty long term. That's why I said organizations like us are very long term in our thinking. It takes us a lot of time to develop and reach a stage. Even now, some of our procedures get totally recast when we find some new scenario coming. So it is a evolving period for me.
Actually, maybe I'll share at least the way we have been looking at it is, look, two things you have to get right. One is your approach of handling something has to be consistent. The exact system or process may vary from geography to geography, but how you look at something or some function has to be consistent. And like I think Hitesh Bhai has been saying, look, your values, the core one or two values that you want, which are non-compromisable, that has to be understood to everyone. If it's quality, then it has to be understood to everyone. That chalta hai it will not work. So that I think if you set that up, then it works fine. Last question, I think Ruchi, you have your hand raised.
My question is to Mr. Doshi. So sir, I am Ruchi Kukreja from Hindalco. So India is definitely booming in terms of the solar installations, but we also see that there are a lot of imports in terms of solar modules and other the key components which are coming to India. So my question to you is, how should India step up to ensure that the imports are curtailed and we develop the whole ecosystem here and we become cost effective not only from India context and also from the exports context?
Thank you. I think government has already take all the steps like a tariff and non-tariff barriers. So whatever the import is happening today, this is because of the change in law or some window was given for some projects. And some projects for the hydrogen and off-grids, they are allowed now. But the way the production is increasing in India, the cost competitiveness is coming up, I think it will stop also. But it has came down by 70-75% already.
So thank you so much. Let's wind up. Thank you so much, Madhav and Hitesh Bhai. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful fireside chat and keeping us engaged for 1 hour. That was really energetic. And you said 1 hour, so that is in my mind. But that was really interesting chat. So now we would like to present memento to our speakers. I would request Mr. Rohit Pathak to present memento to Mr. Hitesh Doshi. Mr. Madhav Das. Thank you so much. Thank you, gentlemen. And we are immediately starting with our next session. I'm sure everybody are looking forward to it. And we are just setting the stage for next session. So I would request all our guests to be seated, please, because we are not breaking for lunch yet. And I'm sure जो अगले speaker जो आ रहे हैं, he is going to fill the time with laughter and energy. So हम थोड़ा time भूख को भूल जाएंगे. And let us set the stage. In the meanwhile, my sincere request to our guests, the next session, please do not record it. I repeat, the next session, please do not record it. So as we are setting up the stage for the next session, let me formally introduce our next speaker. And before I begin reading the formal introduction, all of us know he has got one more talent. We know his talent as